Chapter 33:24. However, as soon as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three approached Penglai Palace, they were stopped by the gatekeepers. "Who are you?" The two cultivators looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three with a serious expression. Those who are not disciples of Penglai Palace are not allowed to enter. Di Beichen immediately took out the token that Long Yanwei had given them. "We are here to look for Master Long. Please pass on the message." Master Long? Listening to Di Beichen's words, the two could not help but show a touch of surprise in their eyes. Usually, there were many people who wanted to see Master Long, but there were very few who could really see him. However, the token in Di Beichen's hand was somewhat familiar to them. It did seem to belong to Master Long suddenly. The two of them looked at Di Beichen and the other three with a different gaze. "Wait here for a moment. I will pass on the message." "Thank you." Not long after, the disciple who went to pass on the message came back. "Come with me." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three suddenly showed a smile on their faces. They followed the disciple and walked into the interior of Penglai Palace. The four walked all the way in Penglai Palace. The ground and walls of the entire Penglai Palace were all covered with marble. Under the bright light, it looked even more noble and extraordinary. Looking at such an arrangement, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also understood that the cost of the construction must be very high. It was obvious that Penglai Palace was very rich. The entire Penglai Palace was very large. It seemed to be divided into many areas. Many areas could not be approached at will. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three did not ask anything. They thought that Penglai Palace must be a place with a strict hierarchy. Finally, after walking for a long time, the disciple stopped in front of a building. "Master Long is here. You can go in." "Thank you very much." Di Beichen cupped his hands, and the disciple turned and left. When Long Yanwei saw Di Beichen and the other three, a joyful smile couldn't help but surface on his face. He had already guessed that these four little fellows would definitely come to find him today. Demon pet eggs had a great attraction to every cultivator. "You're here." There was a faint smile on Long Yanwei's face. He did not show the slightest bit of arrogance because of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's agreement. He still had an amiable and approachable appearance. "Please sit." Seeing Long Yanwei's appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but sigh in their hearts. No wonder Long Yanwei had such a great reputation on Penglai Island. At the very least, they did not see the slightest bit of arrogance from Long Yanwei. It was not easy for someone in a high position to maintain such an amiable attitude. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three sat down at the side, but their eyes quietly sized up the entire hall. This hall was extremely eye-catching among the many buildings they had seen before. It could be seen that Long Yanwei's position in Penglai Palace was very high. The decoration inside was not magnificent, but it was unique. It showed the atmosphere and luxury everywhere, but it was not tainted with the slightest bit of vulgarity. It was very consistent with Long Yanwei's character. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three sat down, they realized that Long Yanwei had already sent people to prepare their tea. "Since you came to find me today, you must be willing to join Penglai Palace?" Long Yanwei's face had a faint smile as he went straight to the point. Chapter 33:25. Hearing Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other and then nodded together. Since they had already made their decision, there was naturally no need to hide anything at this moment. "Before joining, we just want to know that what Master Long said about giving each of us a suitable monster pet egg should be true, right?" Di Beichen stared at Long Yanwei and asked aloud. The only attraction of Penglai Palace to them was the monster pet egg. Other than that, they really didn't care about anything else. Long Yanwei nodded, but after listening to Di Beichen's words, he felt that things seemed to be a little different from what he had imagined. "That day, when you fought with the heaven-shaking faction's leader, I saw it with my own eyes. As far as I know, you already have 3 contract beasts. There should only be one person who doesn't have a contract beast, right?" Long Yanwei stared at Di Beichen and the other three. So far, he still didn't know which 3 contract beasts belonged to which 3 cultivators. However, Xiaohe and Xiao Bai were obviously contract beasts of the same breed, and they were of the same age. If his judgment wasn't wrong, these 2 contract beasts should belong to a couple among Di Beichun and the other 3. Back then, Bai Shi fought together with Di Beichun, and their cooperation was extremely good. Therefore, Long Yanwei had already determined that Bai Shi was Di Beichun's contract beast. Xiaohe and Xiao Bai Shi belonged to Xiren and Shangguan Yingying's contract beasts. The only person who didn't have a contract beast should be Bailey Hongzhuang. However, when he confirmed this point, Long Yanwei felt that something was amiss. Because Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiaohe and Xiao Bai cooperated extremely well, and they looked more like her contract beasts, he couldn't be sure for a moment. Following Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were slightly startled, and their expressions suddenly became a little more interesting. In fact, Long Yanwei's thoughts weren't wrong at all. No matter who it was, after seeing the previous situation, they would have determined that the 3 of them had contract beasts. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was really too special and couldn't be judged with common sense at all. At the same time, they also understood why Long Yanwei would be so generous to give them such a condition. 1 contract beast and 3 contract beasts were completely different. With Long Yanwei's status, it shouldn't be difficult to take out a contract beast that matched their status. But to take out 3, this was a huge amount of capital. For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and others didn't know how to answer to Long Yanwei's question. When Long Yanwei noticed the slightly awkward and strange expressions on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3's faces, he couldn't help but reveal a trace of doubt on his face. He asked, "Am I wrong?" Hearing this, Di Beichun muttered to himself for a moment, then said, "Lord Long, our situation might not be the same as what you think." "Then what situation is it? You can tell me. Since I promised you this, I'll definitely do it." Long Yanwei raised his eyebrows. He was really curious about where he had made a mistake in his judgment. As soon as he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3's eyes lit up. They seemed to have found a good opportunity to take advantage of him. With Long Yanwei's status, it was unlikely that he would take back his promise after making it. Chapter 33:26. Following Di Beichun's words, Long Yanwei became the one with a strange expression. He looked at Di Beichun's group of 4 in confusion, not understanding what Di Beichun meant. "None of you have contracted beasts." Long Yanwei frowned. "But according to what I saw earlier, your group clearly has 3 contracted beasts. Could it be that 2 of them have not contracted? That's impossible. If they had not contracted, then they would not be contracted beasts, but monsters. Monsters would not listen to the commands of cultivators. Even if they cooperated for a short period of time, they could betray at any time. It wasn't as if no one on the Shengxian continent had ever attempted such a thing, but it had all ended in failure. This was because demonic beasts had different personalities from humans. Without the power of a contract, their wild nature could erupt at any time. Not only that, the higher the level of a monster, the stronger the bestial nature in its body. At the level of the 5th level of the Purple Realm, ordinary monsters would not be able to form any kind of cooperative relationship with cultivators. If Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 could really do this, then he would have to ask for advice. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but say, "To tell you the truth, those 3 monsters are my contracted beasts." At this level of cultivation, Bailey Hongzhuang no longer had to hide the fact that she had 3 contract beasts. What's more, her 3 contract beasts were not something that anyone could underestimate. 2 of them were at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, and 1 was at the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Ordinary people would not dare to offend such a team. So they are all yours alone. Long Yanwei suddenly understood, but when he realized what this meant, he could not help but be stunned. Then his eyes widened as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang as if he had seen something unbelievable. "I didn't hear you clearly. You said that these 3 contracted beasts are all yours alone? You contracted 3 demonic beasts by yourself? How is that possible? Long Yan Wei, who had been extremely calm, could not help but become agitated at this moment. This completely subverted his common sense. Every cultivator could only contract one monster. Was this not the rule of the Shengxian continent? It was not that no one had ever tried to contract two monsters, but no one had ever succeeded. It was proven that a cultivator could only contract one monster at most. How could Bailey Hongzhuang contract 3 monsters alone? Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 were very indifferent to Long Yanwei's exaggerated reaction. In fact, when Di Beichen's group of 3 found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had such a special ability, they were also very surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. You didn't hear wrong. These 3 contracted beasts are my contracted beasts alone. One beast, beasts. Beasts, beasts. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's confirmation, Long Yanwei's incredulous expression did not improve. Can you tell me how you did it? As a sealing master, he thought that he was very familiar with things like contracts. However, from Bailey Hongzhuang's group, he had seen too many strange things. It made him start to doubt his previous knowledge and judgment. I don't know either. I just succeeded in contracting 3 monsters by chance. Chapter 33:27. The reason why she was able to contract 3 monsters was entirely due to the Chaos Ring. If it wasn't for the special ability bestowed upon her by the Chaos Ring, she wouldn't have been able to form a contract with 3 demonic beasts. However, she definitely couldn't reveal the secret of the Chaos Ring, so at this moment, she could only play dumb. In fact, there was no need for Long Yanwei to study this point at all, because this point could not be replicated at all. Other than Bailey Hongzhuang, it was impossible for other cultivators to do it, unless there were other chaos rings in this world. However, this possibility was even smaller. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Long Yanwei also understood that Bailey Hongzhuang definitely did not want to reveal this secret, so he did not continue to ask. Everyone had their own secrets. It was not a good habit to rashly inquire about other people's secrets. What's more, they had only met twice. It was naturally impossible for Bailey Hongzhuang to tell him everything. This is really amazing. I have been a contract master for so many years and have never seen such an example. I wonder if you can let your monsters out for me to take a look? Long Yanwei said. At this moment, only Baisher was following Bailey Hongzhuang. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were both on Bailey Hongzhuang's head. Long Yanwei did not notice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and did not refuse Long Yanwei's request. Since Long Yanwei had already seen the situation of their battle that day, then whether it was Baisher, Xiao He, or Xiao Bai, he believed that he already had a certain understanding of them. Even if they did not know Long Yanwei's strength, they knew that Master Long, who had such a position in Penglai Palace, was definitely extraordinary. In the next second, Xiao He and Xiao Bai appeared in front of Long Yanwei. However, the 2 little guys were still sitting on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders. Seeing this scene, Long Yanwei also confirmed that his previous judgment was not wrong. These 2 monsters did indeed have the ability to change their size. It was really amazing. Young Master D, I wonder if you would mind letting me see their contract totems? Long Yanwei shifted his gaze from Xiao He and Xiao Bai to Bailey Hongzhuang. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang was extremely certain, this news was too shocking to Long Yanwei. If he did not see it with his own eyes, he would never believe it. Di Beichen and the other 2 could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. If Bailey Hongzhuang was unwilling, they could directly refuse. Even if they would offend Long Yanwei, it was not a big deal. Bailey Hongzhuang to Bailey Hongzhuang. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang's mind moved. A circular ceiling totem appeared on Baisher, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai's bodies. This totem had always existed. Any cultivator with a contract beast would have such a ceiling totem. It was just that it could not be seen normally. It could only be seen when it was deliberately revealed. When Long Yanwei saw that the totems on the 3 contract beasts were exactly the same, he completely believed Bailey Hongzhuang's words. All of this was actually true. The three contract beasts actually belonged to Bailey Hongzhuang alone. Long Yanwei sighed and shook his head. He said, "This situation has really overturned my understanding. I really learned something today." Chapter 33:28. Master Long, now that this point has been confirmed, I wonder what your plans are. Di Beichun reminded Long Yanwei. They came here for Long Yanwei's answer, not to let Bailey Hongzhuang do research for Long Yanwei. Hearing Di Beichun's words, Long Yanwei finally recovered from his shock. Very quickly, he understood the meaning of Di Beichun's question. "So, none of you three have contracted beasts?" Di Beichun, Wen Xiren, and Shangwan Yingying all nodded. They secretly cursed in their hearts, wondering if Long Yanwei would go back on his word. Actually, this couldn't be considered going back on his word. From the beginning to the end, Long Yanwei only thought that they were missing one demon pet egg. Now that it had become 3, most people wouldn't be able to bear it. Therefore, Di Beichun and the other two didn't have too much hope. Even if Long Yanwei refused, it would be reasonable. Looking at Di Beichun and the other two who nodded in front of him, Long Yanwei finally reacted. In this way, he would have to take out 3 demon pet eggs. This was completely different from what he had thought before. Long Yanwei felt that it was worth it to use 1 demon pet egg to recruit these 4 young people. However, to use 3 demon pet eggs to recruit them, the price was not ordinary. If this news were spread, everyone would think that he was crazy. A demon pet egg of this level was extremely precious. Many cultivators had paid an extremely high price to obtain one from him. Just like that, he gave out 3 for free. Normally, no one with a normal brain would do such a thing. However, when he thought about the promise he had made before, he felt that he was in a dilemma. Speaking of which, there was indeed a loophole in what he had said before. He had said that he would give Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 demon pet eggs that were suitable for them, but he had never said the number. Therefore, it was extremely normal for Di Beichun and the others to think that it was 3 demon pet eggs. From the beginning to the end, this could only be said to be because he hadn't figured out the specific situation before, resulting in such a problem. Now that things had developed to this point, Long Yanwei was a little embarrassed for a moment. He didn't know how to answer. Didn't Master Long already say before that he would give each of us a suitable demon pet egg? Then we'll thank Master Long in advance. Xiren noticed Long Yanwei's awkwardness and understood why Long Yanwei felt awkward. Di Beichun was too upright. If things continued to develop like this, he might miss this good opportunity. Since Long Yanwei was in a dilemma, he might as well help Long Yanwei make a decision. When Xiren had always felt that this saying made a lot of sense. 3 demon pet eggs. If he missed this opportunity, he would never have this opportunity again. Although he was a little shameless, he believed that with Long Yanwei's wealth and ability, this little loss was not enough to hurt him. He was just a little annoyed in his heart. However, this demon pet egg had fallen into their hands. That was a real benefit. Master Long, thank you very much. We have always been troubled by the matter of contracting beasts. You directly helped us solve this big problem. We will definitely remember this kindness in our hearts. Noticing Xiren's gaze, Di Beichun and Shangwan Yingying also said words of gratitude. Chapter 33:29. After all, in this kind of situation, if he were to say no, wouldn't that be equivalent to slapping his own face? With his status, he would rather suffer a loss than to slap his own face. However, such a big loss. It really made his heart ache. Long Yanwei couldn't help but glance at Xiren. He didn't expect this kid to be so cunning. He directly sealed off his escape route. He felt helpless in his heart. After Bailey Hongzhuang saw Xiren's actions, she also felt a wave of admiration in her heart. Just by looking at Long Yanwei's expression, she knew that they had taken advantage of him this time. Forget it. Since you guys have already thanked me, then this matter is decided. Long Yanwei sighed. Since things had come to this point, there was nothing he could do about it. Of course, if he had known about this condition before he recruited Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, he would definitely not have recruited them. With such a price, He could recruit too many genius cultivators. However, he had been made a fool of. He could only comfort himself that the potential of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three wasn't something that ordinary geniuses could compare to. Hearing Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three revealed a joyful smile. This was really good news, although there were some twists and turns in the middle. However, the result was still as they wished. Thank you, Master Long. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three left the hall where Long Yanwei was, the smile on Long Yanwei's face disappeared. What replaced it was a thick sense of helplessness. I didn't expect that I would be schemed against by a few little fellows this time. Long Yanwei shook his head. One had to know that every demon pet egg of this level required him to spend a lot of effort. He didn't expect that there would be 3 less compared to Long Yanwei's depression. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were extremely happy. This was the best news for them. Xiren, you were too smart just now. Bailey Hongzhuang gave Xiren a thumbs up. If it wasn't for Xiren tricking Long Yanwei earlier, their contract beasts would have been ruined. Xiren raised his eyebrows. You guys can't even do something like this. You still need me to do it. Ha! Shangguan Yingying also looked at Xiren in surprise. Usually, I didn't see you have any great ability. I didn't expect you to be so quick-witted. To be honest, among the 4 of us, you're the only one with the thickest skin. Hearing this, when Xiren couldn't help but roll his eyes. Yingying, you only need to praise me for being smart, witty, and wise. There's no need for you to say the rest. Ha! Shangguan Yingying stuck out her tongue. I'm used to teasing you, but I really have to praise you for what happened just now. Beichun, didn't I do a good job? When Xiren blinked, with Master Long's status, he can't go back on his word, so he can only suffer in silence. However, with his rich family background, he can still afford this loss. Looking at Xiren's proud look, the corner of D. Beichun's mouth curled up. He said, "He is indeed powerful. We have taken such a big advantage of Master Long. In the future, we must remember, if there is a chance, we must fight for Master Long. After all, we were recruited by him." Chapter 33:30. The most important thing was that they took such a big advantage of Long Yanwei. But Long Yuanwu did not show the slightest bit of anger. He just felt very helpless about what he had said before. Just from this point, it could be seen that Long Yanwei was a magnanimous person. He was definitely not a narrow-minded person. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 slowly walked to the reporting hall of Penglai Palace. Long Yanwei just asked them to wait here for a while. He would soon arrange for someone to help them register as disciples of Penglai Palace. As for the monster pet egg, they would have to wait until they became a true disciple of Penglai Palace before they could receive it. Long Yanwei had to help them choose a suitable monster pet egg first. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were not in a hurry. Since Long Yanwei had already agreed, he would definitely give them the monster pet egg. What was the point of waiting for a few days? The reporting hall of Penglai Palace was very large, but there were very few people inside. There were only a few scattered people. It seemed very empty. The 4 directly sat down in the rest area on the side, waiting for the person who would guide them to come. As far as I know, there are many disciples of Penglai Palace, but we haven't seen many cultivators so far. Where did they go? Shangguan Yingying looked around curiously. She was originally looking forward to seeing the spectacular scene of Penglai Palace's disciples, but the situation was obviously different from what she had imagined. We should be outside of Penglai Palace now. The disciples of Penglai Palace should not be cultivating here. That's why we haven't seen many people, when Xiren said. But we just want to where Master Long was. It can't be that the entire outside is so big, right? Shangguan Yingying raised her eyebrows and said incredulously, "I feel that the place we just went to should not be an ordinary place. It's extremely secluded and deep. I'm afraid that ordinary cultivators can't enter at all," Bailey Hongzhuang said. Deep Beichun nodded slightly. Master Long's position in Penglai Palace is very high. The place where he is must be where ordinary disciples can't get close, so it's not surprising that we can't see anyone. Shangguan Yingying curled her lips. This Penglai Palace has a strict hierarchy. We should know after we become Penglai Palace's disciples. I'm afraid we'll have to wait for a while. Master Long has suffered such a huge loss. I'm afraid he'll need some time to recover. As Di Baichen's voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but chuckle. Everything that had happened since they met Long Yanwei made them feel extremely amused. Let's take this opportunity to remove the disguise on our faces, Shangguan Yingying said. Previously, when they were talking with Long Yanwei had told them that after becoming a disciple of Penglai Palace, there was no need to disguise themselves here. This was also one of the rules of the Penglai Palace. However, they could still continue to disguise themselves when they went out. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three did not have any objections. When they first came to Penglai Island, they did so for the sake of safety. But now, as they gradually familiarized themselves with Penglai Island, they no longer had any scruples. It wasn't a bad choice to reveal their true faces. At least, they were no longer cultivators who were only at the 3rd level of the Purple Realm. Chapter 33-31. Li Shengkai was very surprised. Today, Master Long told him that he had recruited 4 new cultivators and asked him to help register the 4 cultivators so that they could become official disciples of Penglai Palace. If such words came from other people's mouths, Li Shengkai would think it was normal. After all, Penglai Palace was so big that they would recruit some cultivators every once in a while. It was just that Master Long was usually focused on contracting beasts and rarely took the initiative to recruit disciples, which made him surprised. What kind of genius cultivators were worthy of Master Long's personal recruitment? Once this news spread, it would attract a lot of attention. When Li Shengkai arrived at the reporting hall, he saw the backs of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. He immediately walked over and said, "You 4 should be the cultivators recruited by Master Long, right?" Hearing the voice coming from behind, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 turned to look at the person who came. They saw that this person was wearing the uniform of Penglai Palace's disciple with a smile on his face. "Yes, it's us," Di Baichen said. After Li Shengkai saw the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, he couldn't help but be surprised. In his opinion, the cultivators who could be recruited by Master Long must be very talented in cultivation because Master Long didn't care about ordinary cultivators at all. However, the 4 cultivators in front of him were too young. Looking at them, the oldest was probably no more than 25 years old, and the youngest looked like she was only 20 years old. On Penglai Island, almost the vast majority of cultivators were around 30 years old. After all, it would take a long time to cultivate to the 5th level of the Purple Realm. These 4 faces were so young that for a moment, Li Shengkai even wondered if the 4 of them deliberately disguised themselves. However, after thinking of Master Long, he felt that perhaps this was the strength of the 4 people in front of him. Breaking through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm at such a young age was indeed a genius. At least in this regard, they had already surpassed many disciples of Penglai Palace. In addition, what surprised Li Shengkai was the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. Compared to their outstanding cultivation, their appearance was not inferior at all. A handsome man and a beautiful woman. At a glance, it was enough to make people's eyes light up. Even though 1,000 thoughts were running through his mind, Li Shengkai's expression did not change much. He smiled and said, "Come with me. I'll bring you to report." Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 followed Li Shengkai to the front of the reporting hall. A female disciple helped to record the information of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. At the same time, a Qingquan bag fell into each of their hands. The registration information was very simple. All he had to do was to report his name and strength. Seeing this, Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but ask, "Is the report that simple?" She thought it would be a very complicated matter, but she didn't expect it to be settled so easily. Hearing this, Li Shengkai smiled faintly and immediately explained, "If you were an ordinary cultivator, you would need to go through an assessment. The reporting process is very tedious, but you were recommended by Master Long, so this step is directly omitted. It's much more convenient. Chapter 33-32. After hearing Li Shengkai's explanation, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others understood that Long Yanwei's referral had saved them a lot of trouble. Speaking of which, I'm a little curious about how you know Master Long. Li Shengkai couldn't help but ask curiously. Long Yanwei basically stayed in Penglai Palace all the time and rarely went out. He really couldn't guess how Bailey Hongzhuang and the others knew Master Long. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. They had just arrived at Penglai Palace, and there were many strong people there. It was better to keep a low profile. Li Shengkai also noticed the hesitation on the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others and quickly said, "By the way, let me introduce myself first. My name is Li Shengkai, an Outer Hall disciple. We will be in the same sect in the future. If you need any help, don't hesitate to look for me. Then I'll have to trouble you, Senior Brother Li." Deep Beichen cupped his hands. "You're welcome." Li Shengkai smiled and waved his hand. "I have always liked to make friends, and I can tell that you're genius cultivators at first glance. I feel very lucky to have the opportunity to make friends with you." Looking at Li Shengkai's honest face, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also showed a kind smile on their faces. However, no one really regarded Li Shengkai as a trustworthy person. They had already suffered this kind of loss when they met Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxiu. Most of the time, the more honest and simple-looking a person was, the more likely they were to cause harm to others. Anyone who could get some status in Penglai Palace was not an ordinary person. If they dared to look down on others, then they could capsize at any time. This Chinquan bag contains the exclusive clothes of our Penglai Palace. You have to wear these clothes on weekdays. If you go out as a disciple of Penglai Palace, you also need to wear these clothes. This is the symbol of our Penglai Palace. Many times, when you're training outside, wearing these clothes can also reduce some trouble. If the clothes are not suitable, you can come back to exchange. However, you must use your old clothes to exchange, so as to prevent disciples from taking too many and giving them to cultivators outside. About your residence, I happen to be going back to my residence. Let's talk about it while walking. What do you think?" Li Shengkai's face always had a kind smile, and he generously introduced the situation of Penglai Palace to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. "Then I'll have to trouble Senior Brother Li." "You're welcome. This is what Master Long asked me to do. If I don't do it well, I won't be able to explain to Master Long," Li said honestly. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three followed Li Shengkai out of the reporting hall and walked towards the residential area. The palace's disciples and the inner, thus. Disciples can't compare outer, S, and in the resources are the resources, and S's. However, the number of inner palace disciples has never been high. It seems that there have never been more than 500 of them. As for the specific reason, I am not too sure. Chapter 33-33. Is there a big difference in strength between the inner and outer palace disciples? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with interest. It was the first time she had heard about the inner and outer palace. She had always thought that Penglai Palace was a whole. She did not expect that there was such a division inside. It seemed that their judgment was right. This Penglai Palace was really hierarchical. Li Shengkai nodded. Of course, if you want to become an inner palace disciple, you must pass the promotion assessment. I have never participated in the promotion assessment, but according to the information I have learned, it is very difficult to pass the promotion assessment. Most outer palace disciples have failed. As for how strong the inner palace disciples are, I'm not very clear about this, because the inner palace disciples practice in the inner palace of Penglai Palace. They usually do not deal with us outer palace disciples at all. It is difficult for us to come in contact with them. If you have the strength to become an inner palace disciple, it will be best. Both your identity and status will be greatly improved. If you say that you are an inner palace disciple of Penglai Palace when you walk on Penglai Island, ordinary practitioners will not dare to offend you. If you are only an outer palace disciple, Although most people will not choose to be your enemy, there will still be some trouble. We are now going to the practice area of the Outer Palace disciples. Although we have become Outer Palace disciples of Penglai Palace, if we can't pass the promotion assessment and become an Inner Palace disciple after 5 years here, then we will be stripped of our identity as a Penglai Palace disciple and become an ordinary practitioner again. Therefore, almost all of the cultivators are working very hard in their cultivation in order to pass the advancement test. Listening to Li Shengkai's introduction, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 understood that the number of disciples in Penglai Palace had been controlled within a certain range for this reason. As long as they could not become an Inner Palace disciple in 5 years, then they would be stripped of their identity as a Penglai Palace disciple. Therefore, the number of disciples maintained a dynamic balance. Every month, you can go to the reporting hall to receive cultivation resources. If you go out to practice, these cultivation resources will be accumulated and you can receive them next time. In addition, our Outer Palace disciples are all in the same residential area, but many unfamiliar disciples do not come and go. However, if you meet a Penglai Palace disciple outside and they are in danger, you must help them. Otherwise, you will be disregarding your relationship with your fellow disciples. Once you're found out, you will be punished. If the situation is serious, you may be expelled directly. We understand. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 suddenly understood. It was no wonder that Penglai Palace could enjoy such a reputation and status. This rule probably played a part in it. At least in the eyes of the outside practitioners, the disciples of Penglai Palace disciples were unusually united. Therefore, ordinary people did not dare to offend the disciples of Penglai Palace. Penglai Palace's disciples. If they are not strong enough, it is better to do it. If you. Chapter 33-34. Listening to Li Shengkai's introduction, although Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 did not know enough about the outer hall of Penglai Palace, they had a general outline in their hearts. At least, this outer hall was definitely not a very peaceful place. On the contrary, there would be much more friction here than outside Penglai Palace. Finally, under Li Shengkai's lead, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 finally arrive at the outer hall disciples' cultivation area. This way, they found that Long Yanwei's residence, which they went to before, was in the opposite direction from here. No wonder they did not see any cultivators before. Coming to this residential area was undoubtedly much more lively. There were many outer hall disciples, so this residential area was also a large area. Looking around, dozens of buildings turned out to be the residential area of outer hall disciples. Seeing such a scale, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were amazed. When they looked at the gate of Penglai Palace before, they felt that Penglai Palace was huge, but now looking at the residential area, they felt that everything they saw outside was nothing at all. What's more, this was only a residential area of outer hall disciples, not including other places. The entire Penglai Palace was divided into 2 areas, inner hall and outer hall. This Penglai Palace is really big, several times bigger than I thought. Shangwan Yingying's eyes flashed with surprise. Penglai Island was just an island. She really did not expect the sphere of influence on an island to be so large. When Zyra nodded, when I was on Penglai Island earlier, I thought that Penglai Palace only occupied a small part of Penglai Island. Now it seems that Penglai Palace occupies more than half of Penglai Island. No wonder it's called Penglai Island. I just don't know if 100 Flowers Island and Red Moon Island are the same. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Penglai Island should be the gathering place of Penglai Palace. The streets we saw before were just lively places developed around Penglai Palace. Only after entering the Penglai Palace would they understand the real situation. This was very different from what they knew before. This is the second building where I live. If you need anything in the future, you can come here to find me. Li Shengkai pointed at the building where he lived. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 looked around. The entire residential area of the outer palace looked exactly the same, except for the number of buildings marked on the buildings. As he spoke, Li Shengkai pointed to the other side. That's the 5th building where you live. I'll take you there first. There's a door number hanging on each door. You can confirm your room by looking at the door number. The 4 of you came in together, so you should live close to each other. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' eyes lit up. If they lived close by, it would be the most convenient for them. When Li Shengkai led Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 to building number 5, many Outer Palace disciples' gazes landed on Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4. Their gazes were filled with surprise and doubt. I didn't expect new disciples to join today, but these guys seem a little too young. They can pass the assessment of Penglai Palace at such a young age. It seems that these guys are not simple. Chapter 33-35. When almost everyone saw the age of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, they couldn't help but exclaim in their hearts. To be able to reach such a cultivation at such a young age, they were truly geniuses. However, there were even more people who were unconvinced. All the cultivators here believed that they were geniuses and were absolutely unwilling to admit that they were inferior to anyone else. I don't know if these guys are strong or not, but their appearances are very outstanding. Look at those 2 women. They are both peerless beauties. Their temperament and appearance can be said to be unparalleled. The gazes of all the male disciples were attracted by Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying. When a cultivator's strength increased to a certain level, their appearance would also improve a lot. It was precisely because of this that when one reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm and above, it was impossible for ugly men and women to exist. At least, they looked very good. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying were already outstanding in appearance. Coupled with the improvement of their temperament, they appeared even more outstanding. Those 2 men are also very handsome. They look like pretty boys. When talking about Di Beichen and Wen Ziren, the group of men were not so polite. Their appearance was definitely a great weapon for women. Everyone couldn't help but be envious and jealous. Compared to the disdain of the male disciples, the eyes of the female disciples lit up when they looked at Di Beichen and Wen Xinya. It was human nature to eat and lust. Regardless of whether it was a man or a woman, they all liked to look at people with outstanding appearances. This kind of handsome appearance was definitely one of the best in the entire outer hall. Li Shengkai led Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 all the way to the 5th building. He heard everyone's discussion clearly and couldn't help but laugh. Junior brother, junior sister, your appearances are really outstanding. When I first saw you, I couldn't help but be surprised. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 couldn't help but show some helplessness on their faces. The reason why they chose to disguise themselves before was also inseparable from this matter. It was because they were all easy to remember at a glance. After changing their appearances, they would become ordinary and no one would pay attention to them. This way, they would be able to save a lot of trouble. However, Penglai Palace had its own rules. Cultivators had to show their true faces in Penglai Palace. Otherwise, no one could be sure if you were really a disciple of Penglai Palace. Hence, this problem arose once again. When Ziren chuckled. This kind of praise was also troublesome for them. This is building number 5. Your Chinquan bag contains the key to your residence. The house number is written on it, so you can go in directly. The manual also contains the various matters of living in the outer palace. I believe you will understand after reading it. If there's nothing else I can help you with, I'll take my leave first, Li Shengkai said with a smile. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 all cupped their hands. Thank you, senior brotherly. Take care. Looking at the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, Li Shengkai nodded. However, his expression was a little awkward and his footsteps were a little hesitant. However, after seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 didn't do anything else, he strode away. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 couldn't help but look at each other. Did they miss something? Chapter 33-36. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but nod her head. Hongzhuang, I also have the same feeling. It seems like there's a problem, but we didn't do anything wrong. What problem could there be? Xiren raised his eyebrows. His face was full of doubt. He really couldn't think of anything wrong with their behavior. Di Baichen looked at Li Shengkai's back as he left. His expression was unfathomable. He seemed to be thinking about something. In the end, he didn't say anything. Forget it. Let's not think too much about it. Let's find our own residence first. Everyone nodded and immediately walked into the interior of the 5th building. They had been standing here for a long time. Many people had been staring at them. The number of gazes that were sizing them up was not ordinary. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others found the place where they lived. Just as Li Shengkai said, their 4 rooms were adjacent to each other. It was very convenient. Bailey Hongzhuang opened the door. When she saw it, her eyes couldn't help but flash with a hint of amazement. The room was extremely large. It was even larger than the room in the inn. The furnishings and decorations inside were very simple. However, whether it was the material or other aspects, these things were obviously very valuable. This kind of living place was really satisfying. Wow, I didn't expect a room to be so big. It's really comfortable to live here. Shangguan Ying's eyes flashed with excitement. When they were outside, most of the places they lived were very simple. However, the room in front of them wasn't just a place to live. On the contrary, it was extremely comfortable. Bailey Hongzhuang's face rippled with a faint smile. The environment here is indeed not bad. It's quite good to cultivate here. They also needed their own residence on Penglai Island. After all, they couldn't always stay in the Magic Tower. After leaving the Magic Tower, they needed to find a place to settle down and cultivate in peace. Now it seemed that it was indeed a good choice for them to join Penglai Palace. Moreover, there were demon pet eggs. This time they had really profited. For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were filled with gratitude towards Long Yanwei. If Long Yanwei had not gone to recruit them, they would have missed this great opportunity. However, at this moment, Long Yanwei's heart was filled with helplessness. He had stayed in Penglai Palace for so long, but he had never suffered such a big loss. His heart was filled with helplessness. Yanwei, I heard that you recruited those 4 little fellows? Yizihua strode into Long Yanwei's residence with a big smile on his face. You're really fast. However, Yizihua did not receive a response from Long Yanwei. He only saw Long Yanwei sitting in the room with a helpless expression. What's wrong with you? Why do you have such an expression? Yizihua couldn't help but wonder. He hadn't heard of Long Yanwei having any troubles recently. Long Yanwei waved his hand and said, Don't mention it. I suffered a huge loss today. Hearing this, Yizihua could not help but be stunned, and a look of astonishment appeared on his face. Did I hear wrongly? Is there anyone who dares to make you suffer? Is he tired of living? Chapter 33-37. Long Yanwei shook his head helplessly. If I was cheated by the palace master, then so be it. I've already gotten used to it. Not cheated by the palace master? Then who cheated you? There aren't many people in this Penglai Palace who can cheat you. Yizihua's eyes flashed with interest. He had known Long Yanwei for so long. Other than the palace master who could usually dig some things out of him, ordinary people really couldn't do it. After all, with Long Yanwei's identity, it was impossible for the other party to use force to suppress others. Sigh. This time, I've really suffered a huge loss. I was cheated by those 4 little fellows. Long Yanwei spread out his hands. He said frankly, the moment these words came out, Yizihua couldn't help but be stunned. He said, You're talking about the 4 little fellows that you just recruited? That's right. It's them. What do they cheat you of? Demon pet egg? Long Yanwei nodded. That's right. It's a demon pet egg. Yizihua smiled faintly. He said, Cheating you of a demon pet egg is indeed a huge price. However, those 4 little fellows all have a bright future. 2 of them are even inheritors of the Bloodground Abyss. I feel that the possibility of them becoming inner palace disciples in the future is very high. Just treat it as a reward for them in advance. There's no need to be so worried. In any case, you can still take out a demon pet egg. It's not a big problem. looking at Izihua's matter-of-fact appearance. The helplessness in Long Yanwei's heart grew. It's not one demon pet egg. It's 3 demon pet eggs. If it was just one demon pet egg, I wouldn't have such an expression right now. Following Long Yanwei's words, Izihua couldn't help but be startled. He looked at Long Yanwei in astonishment. He wondered if he had heard wrongly. What did you say? 3 demon pet eggs? I didn't hear wrongly, right? Long Yanwei shook his head. You didn't hear wrongly. It's 3 demon pet eggs. Damn. Izihua couldn't help but ridicule. Are you kidding me? In order to recruit the 4 little fellows back, you pay the price of 3 demon pet eggs? This price is too big. Do you really think so highly of them? As he spoke, Izihua couldn't help but shake his head. That's not right. For a miser like you, it would take half a day for the palace master to come here and dig out a single demon pet egg. How could you possibly agree to take out 3 demon pet eggs in one go? Besides, these are all tricks. Speaking of which, it's my fault for not being careful with my words. Long Yanwei waved his hand. Forget it. Since things have come to this, I won't say anything more. However, Izihua's interest was piqued, and he said, Tell me about it. It's not easy to encounter such a situation, so I have to understand how you suffered such a loss. Facing Izihua's stubbornness, Long Yanwei had no choice but to tell Izihua about how he recruited Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. After hearing all this, Izihua was shocked, but at the same time, he was also very interested in Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. Haha, you, Master Long, personally went to recruit a cultivator but was rejected. If this news were to spread, it would be unbelievable. Haha, Izihua couldn't help but laugh out loud. Just thinking about Long Yanwei's expression when he was rejected, he felt that it must be extremely interesting. Looking at Izihua's expression, Long Yanwei couldn't help but roll his eyes. This was the most helpless thing about meeting a newcomer. No matter how you introduce yourself, the other party was completely clueless. Chapter 33-38. Izihua put away his joking expression, and a trace of seriousness emerged on his face. One person contracting 3 demonic beasts. This was incredible news. If every cultivator could contract a few demonic beasts, then their battle prowess would be greatly enhanced. In other words, if someone wanted to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang, then not only would they have to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang alone, they would also have to deal with her 3 extremely terrifying contracted beasts. Aside from group battles, who could beat Bailey Hongzhuang in a duel? Long Yanwei nodded. I also feel that this point is really hard to fathom, but when I looked at the contracted totems of the 3 contracted beasts, they really are exactly the same. That's strange. I've never heard of such a strange thing. Izihua frowned. Has such a thing happened in the history of the Shengxian continent? I've checked the ancient records, but there doesn't seem to be such a record. I can't tell how Bailey Hongzhuang did it. At this point, Long Yanwei seemed to have forgotten that he had been tricked, and his eyes flashed with a strong light of interest. He was very interested in studying this kind of thing that was beyond the scope of understanding. Looking at Long Yanwei like this, Izihua couldn't help but laugh. Don't you always say that there's nothing new? Now, that so many new things have appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang, isn't it just right for you to study? If she leaves, you won't be able to continue to understand these things, so if you suffer this loss, then so be it. At most, I'll accompany you to look for newborn beasts in a few days. That's what you said. You'll accompany me in a few days. Long Yanwei's face suddenly revealed a smile, sweeping away the haze from before. It was precisely because of Izihua's words that he decided to suffer this loss. Although the price he had to pay was a bit high, the benefits he wanted were also the same. After Li Shangkai sent Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 to their residence, he returned to his own residence. On the way, there were many people who knew Li Shangkai who stopped him. Li Shangkai, where did those 4 guys come from? Were they recruited by some master? The faces of all the cultivators flashed with excitement. Now was not the time for Penglai Palace to recruit new people, so most of the cultivators who came at this time were recruited by the higher-ups of Penglai Palace. Everyone paid the most attention to such cultivators on a daily basis. They were recruited by Master Long. Li Shunkai told the truth. As soon as Li Shunkai finished speaking, the expressions of all the cultivators changed. Their faces were filled with shock. Master Long? They were actually recruited by Master Long? How is this possible? I have been in the Penglai Palace for so long, but this is the first time I have heard of Master Long actively recruiting cultivators. Li Shunkai, did you make a mistake? Seeing everyone's doubtful expressions, Li Shunkai could not help but say, "Why would I lie to you about this? I just happened to go to Master Long's place. When Master Long saw me, he said that he had recruited 4 cultivators and asked me to report to him." Seeing Li Shunkai's serious expression and that he didn't seem to be joking at all, everyone's expressions couldn't help but change. Chapter 33-39. Since they were recruited by Master Long, I'm afraid their strength is not simple. Maybe they have an extraordinary background. After all, there are very few people who can make Master Long show up. The cultivators who were originally very disdainful of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 gradually changed their minds. With Master Long as their backer, they were already not someone they could afford to provoke. So, you should have gained a lot of benefits from them, right? Everyone looked at Li Shunkai curiously. In their Penglai Palace, no matter who they asked for help, they would have to pay a certain price. This was also the reason why everyone was very willing to help. Otherwise, everyone would be very busy. Who would be interested in helping you? Hearing this question, Li Shunkai's expression suddenly collapsed. Don't mention it. I also think that these guys should be worth a lot. I didn't expect them to only say thank you to me. There was no substantial gratitude. I'm really speechless. Today's trip was completely in vain. Thinking of the matter-of-fact expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, Li Shunkai was furious. Although they could receive cultivation resources every month when they cultivated in Penglai Palace, it was still far from enough for them. The competition for resources was always the fiercest. Originally, he thought that it was a good job for Master Long to let him bring these 4 people to report. No matter what, he would have a good harvest. He did not expect that he would spend so much effort to introduce so many things to them and personally send them to building number 5. In the end, he only got a word of gratitude. What was the use of gratitude? What he needed was an actual thank you, not a verbal thank you, okay? As Li Shunkai's voice fell, everyone could not help but be stunned again. Their expressions suddenly became interesting. Many people even laughed at him without giving him any face. They are cultivators recruited by Master Long. Why would they need to give you substantial gratitude? Maybe they think that it's already an honor for you to serve them. Haha. I thought you would be able to gain something this time. I didn't expect it to be all for naught. What a waste of effort. That's not necessarily true. Maybe these people don't know the rules of our Penglai Palace, so they made such a joke. The disciples of the outer hall spoke one after another, each with different opinions. Li Shunkai waved his hand. He had long lost interest in this reason. Consider it my bad luck today and a waste of time. Don't ask me anything. I don't know anything about them. I'll be leaving first. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Shunkai left with a gloomy face. He had been smiling for so long today, but he did not expect this ending. It really made him feel helpless. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had just familiarized themselves with their new residence and were immersed in satisfaction. They didn't know that they had become the subject of everyone's discussion, and they also didn't know about the blunder they had made. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others sat together, and when Xiren couldn't help but ask. Hearing this, the 4 of them looked at each other. None of them had a definite answer, because no matter if it was staying here or going to the Demon Refining Tower, they were both good choices. Chapter 33-40. Listening to Di Baichen's suggestion, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 also took out manuals from their Chinkoan bags. Li Shunkai introduced to them a lot of things to pay attention to when interacting with fellow disciples in the outer hall. However, he did not mention how to cultivate in the Penglai Palace and how the outer hall could help cultivators. Therefore, they did not know how the outer hall disciples usually cultivated. If it was just to stay in the house and cultivate in seclusion, it was obviously meaningless. Instead, they might as well go to the cultivation area of the magic refining tower to cultivate. Not only could they improve their cultivation quickly there, but they could also save a lot of time. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three finished reading the contents of the manual, they also had a certain understanding of the outer hall. It turned out that the Penglai Palace also had a cultivation area that belonged to them, but this cultivation area also required a certain amount of merit points. In order to obtain merit points, cultivators needed to go to other islands to hunt monsters through the transmission array inside the Penglai Palace. As long as they brought back the gallbladder of the monster, they could go to the reporting hall to exchange for merit points. Using these merit points, cultivators would be able to cultivate in the cultivation area. Not only that, these merit points also represented the glory of the cultivator. Similarly, these merit points could also be traded, equivalent to the currency in the Penglai Palace. However, spirit stones could also achieve the same effect, but using spirit stones to enter the cultivation area to cultivate, the price was not ordinary. Therefore, most of the cultivators in the outer hall chose to go to the islands to hunt monsters to obtain merit points. After understanding all this, Bailey Hongzhuang's face showed a look of realization. I was wondering why many of the cultivators we saw before were injured. They must have come back from hunting monsters and are now recuperating. Di Baichen nodded and said in a deep voice, "So, most of the disciples in the outer hall are only in 3 places. One is on the island outside, the second is recuperating in the residence, and the third is cultivating in the cultivation area. Actually, this kind of life isn't too different from our demon refining tower. The only difference is that one is fighting against monstrous beasts, while the other is fighting against cultivators." When Xiren spread out his hands and spoke of the similarities, Shangguan Yingying glanced at everyone and said, "Then what do you all think? In my opinion, we should stay in the Penglai Palace first, and consider leaving after we get the monster pet egg." Di Baichen said slowly. Since the difference between the Penglai Palace and a magic refining tower was not big, it was better to stay here first. Long Yanwei had already promised to choose a suitable contract beast for them. Presumably, it wouldn't take long before it would be delivered to their hands. Listening to Di Baichen's words, Xiren agreed. "That's decided then. I wonder how long it will take for me to receive news from Master Long. I'm really looking forward to having a contract beast." She had been looking forward to this day. She had been looking forward to Di Baichen's. And Hongzhuang Di and Di Baichen's S. Beidou B. In the next few days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had been cultivating in seclusion in the house. In fact, they were all cultivating in the ocean world. Chapter 33:41. Ever since the battle with Gao Hanshun, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 found that their fighting strength still needed to be improved. If it wasn't for the poison in Bailey Hongzhuang's body, they would have already been defeated when they fought with Gao Hanshun. It was just a slight difference, and the winner was the king while the loser was the bandit. Speaking of which, their victory in this battle also had an element of luck. However, this kind of luck did not appear every time. The most important thing was to improve their own strength. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen had this kind of feeling, Xiren and Shangguan Yingying felt it even more deeply. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen had the inheritance of the blood refining tower, and the blood chi field could directly help them improve their cultivation. Therefore, although they both had a cultivation of the 5th level of the purple realm, there was a big gap in their fighting strength. If their strength could also increase explosively in the previous battle, then they wouldn't be in such a predicament. The biggest pressure fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen. This was not what they wanted to see. Therefore, when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying had made up their minds to improve this, under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen found that Xiren and Shangguan Yingying often stayed together to cultivate, but they didn't know what Xiren and Shangguan Yingying were cultivating. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen asked, Xiren always smiled and said it was a secret weapon. As they drifted in the ocean world for a long time, they also began to see the existence of islands. Because Xiren and Shangwan Yingying both needed a place to cultivate, they simply stayed on this island for a period of time. Every time Xiren and Shangwan Yingying finished cultivating, they had an exhausted look on their faces. It was obvious that the cultivation was extremely difficult. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were also puzzled. They did not understand what the two of them were cultivating to be able to exhaust themselves every time. It was truly puzzling. I've noticed that Yingying has been unusually tired every day. Even the color on her face has faded quite a bit. I wonder what they're cultivating. It's really too tiring. Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes revealed a faint look of concern. She didn't care what secret weapon Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were cultivating. She just felt that if this continued, their bodies might not be able to take it. Xiren and the others should have their own plans. Since they have been so insistent, they must have their own reasons. The only thing we can do is to support them. Di Beichun had a gentle smile on his face. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was sincerely concerned about Xiren, but he also knew that Xiren would not do something without a reason. Since they had chosen to do this, it proved that they felt that this was the right choice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I still have some pills that can replenish blood and qi. I'll give them to them later. It should be of some help. My wife is so understanding. Di Beichun hugged Bailey Hongzhuang dotingly. It's good that the two of them are busy cultivating on the other side of the island every day. It gives us some time to spend alone. Hearing Di Beichun's words, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle. Her gaze fell on the corpse of the monster they had just killed. This kind of scene doesn't seem to be very harmonious with enjoying some alone time, does it? Chapter 3342. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were wholeheartedly cultivating in the ocean world, their story gradually spread in the Penglai Palace. There were many cultivators in the Penglai Palace, so it was not difficult to investigate some things. Not to mention that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's battle was not far from the Penglai Palace, and there were many cultivators watching. Therefore, as long as someone asked around, they would be able to know the truth. These four new disciples are not big shots with backgrounds. You don't have to guess blindly. They're just four newcomers who came to the Penglai Island not long ago. Since they're just ordinary newcomers, how could they be recruited by Master Long? Master Long's vision is extraordinarily high. They killed the sect master of the heaven-shaking faction in the previous battle, and two of them obtained the inheritance of the blood-ground abyss. A cultivator who knew the truth slowly explained the situation. As soon as these words came out, many disciples showed a look of realization. Recently, this news had been spreading in the Penglai Island. Two inheritors of the blood-ground abyss appeared at once. This was not something that could be easily seen. Moreover, they defeated the sect master of the heaven-shaking faction. From that day onwards, the heaven-shaking faction completely disappeared from the Penglai Island. How could people not be shocked? I also heard about this matter, but as far as I know, it was a group of 3 men and 1 woman. The newcomers are 2 men and 2 women. It doesn't seem right, right? You don't know this. The 3 men and 1 woman from before were just their disguise. I heard this news from Master Long's subordinates. It is absolutely true. In addition, there is an even more shocking news, but Master Long's subordinates did not let me say it. Listening to this cultivator's deliberately mystifying words, the curiosity of the Outer Palace disciples was almost ignited. Master Long's sudden recruitment of 4 rookies filled everyone with suspicion. They felt that there might be some other reason behind this, but no one knew what it was. At this moment, there was finally someone who knew the inside story, so they naturally did not want to let go. Quickly tell us, what is the more shocking news? If you want to hear it, you have to pay something. Looking at the other party's appearance, everyone felt helpless and immediately took out spirit stones from their arms. Compared to some spirit stones, they were more interested in the inside story. I heard that Master Long agreed to give them 3 monster eggs, and they're monster eggs that are suitable for their cultivation, not low-level monster eggs. As the cultivator's voice fell, everyone present could not help but be dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with shock, and even more so, they were in disbelief. Don't joke around. That's impossible. 3 monster eggs? Unless Master Long's brain was squeezed by a door. How could he agree to such a condition? Chapter 33:43. In the face of this person's solemn vow, everyone was still skeptical because this news was too explosive. Isn't it only possible to obtain a demon pet egg from Master Long by becoming an inner palace disciple? Outer palace disciples simply don't have the possibility to obtain it. That's right. Even if it's an inner palace disciple, not everyone can obtain a demon pet egg, unless it's someone with extremely outstanding strength. These 4 people have only just arrived at Penglai Island. What ability do they have to make Master Long pay such a price? Your news is simply too unconvincing. If it was anyone else, they would find it hard to believe. Everyone looked at each other. This news was like someone telling them that all the outer palace disciples of Penglai Palace could directly become inner palace disciples. It was like a fantasy story. It was hard to believe. I'm not sure what the reason is. However, this matter is indeed true. It's up to you to believe it or not. I've already taken your spirit stones. If I still say such nonsense, then wouldn't I be asking for trouble? A displeased expression appeared on the man's face. It wasn't easy for him to find out such explosive news. Originally, he thought that it would surprise everyone. He didn't expect that everyone would continuously doubt it. The result was very different from what he imagined. I do know that he does have an extremely good personal relationship with Master Long's subordinates. Presumably, he wouldn't use such a thing to deceive us. This wouldn't do him any good. At this time, another cultivator came out to help testify. Seeing this, everyone's expression couldn't help but gradually change. Their minds were constantly thinking about the possibility of this matter. If all of this was true, then things would be interesting. 3 demon pet eggs. That was a treasure that anyone would be jealous of. A demon pet egg that could match with a Purple Realm 5th level cultivation. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that this was truly worth tens of thousands of gold. In the entire Penglai Island, other than Master Long who could take it out, no one else could. In other words, this was a treasure that had a price, but no market. Even if you really took out a lot of spirit stones to exchange for it, with Master Long's wealth, he wouldn't even put this money in his eyes. This was the most tragic part. If it was just for money, it was still possible for everyone to put their lives on the line. However, if it was about favors or other aspects, it would be even more difficult. As far as I know, even if the Palace Master wants to get a high-level monster pet egg from Master Long, it will take a lot of effort. These 4 newcomers just came to Penglai Island. What ability do they have to make Master Long make such a decision? For a moment, everyone looked at each other. This was too difficult for them to understand. However, even more cultivators were still in disbelief because Master Long would not be so generous. However, this suspicion was completely dispelled after Master Long's subordinate admitted it himself. Ever since that person revealed this news, almost everyone with some ability tried to find Master Long's subordinates to ask about this matter again and again. They proposed all kinds of tempting conditions and finally managed to pry open the other party's mouth. As expected, all of this was actually real. The entire outer hall was in an uproar when this news was released. Master Long actually gave out 3 demon pet eggs in one go, and they were even high-level demon pet eggs. Chapter 33:44. Many people were waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 to come out. They want to know what was going on from Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, and how they got Master Long to agree to give out 3 demon pet eggs. However, since the day Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 reported, they had been staying in the house and had never appeared. Even if someone knocked on the door, there was no response. If it wasn't for the fact that everyone saw them enter the house and never come out, everyone would have thought that they had gone out. Almost every day, there were cultivators who didn't believe it and knocked on the door. But the result was the same. The other party didn't pay any attention to them. Everyone was already jealous of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's treatment. Now that they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three being so arrogant and ignoring everyone's attitude, they also felt a strong displeasure in their hearts. They only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had the protection of Master Long, so they thought highly of themselves and looked down on the other cultivators in the outer palace. When Li Shunkai found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had obtained such great benefits from Master Long, he couldn't help but be shocked. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's position in Master Long's heart was really not ordinary. He also began to feel a little lucky that he didn't directly fall out with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. However, the jealousy in his heart was even stronger than the other cultivators. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had already obtained so many benefits from Master Long. In the end, they didn't even give him any benefits. It was really too stingy. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were wholeheartedly cultivating in the ocean world. They didn't know that so many things had happened when they were in seclusion. They only wanted to hunt demon beasts because the demon beasts in the ocean world also had the guts. It was proven that as long as the demon beast cultivation reached the purple realm, it would have the guts. According to their judgment, there wasn't much difference between this essence gallbladder and the essence gallbladder of the outside world, but there were some differences between the demon crystals. The demonic crystals naturally went into White Lion's stomach. Its cultivation method was far from what Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could compare with. Since White Lion's cultivation could be improved through this method, they naturally hoped that White Lion's strength would increase as much as possible. This would also increase their overall strength. Merit points were extremely important in the Penglai Palace. They had already made plans. After they obtained the demon pet egg from Long Yanwei, they would go through the teleportation array to hunt demon beasts. In the process of hunting demonic beasts, no one would pay attention to how many demonic beasts you had killed. They could have put the primordial gallstones they had obtained from the oceanic world into it. To them, the essence gallbladder had the same function as spirit stones. However, the merit points that could be exchanged for using essence gallbladders were much more valuable than spirit stones. Therefore, in the process of hunting demonic beasts, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three spared no effort. With the island as the center, they hunted demonic beasts for a day and cultivated for another day. In this process, the primordial gallstones in their bodies were constantly gathering. Since Di Beichen's physique had completely changed, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two discovered the power of this physique in cultivation. Obviously, the four of them were all sitting together cultivating, but the primordial gallstones in the air were almost all attracted by Di Beichen and continuously poured into Di Beichen's body. Chapter 3345. After cultivating in the ocean world for several days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three felt that the time was not short. Only then did they decide to leave the ocean world. After all, before they entered the ocean world, Long Yanwei had already told them that it would take a certain amount of time to choose the demon pet eggs. He told them to come find him after 10 days. If Long Yanwei had already helped them choose a suitable contract beast, Long Yanwei would send someone to inform them after 10 days. If not, then they would continue to wait for the news. In this regard, according to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's judgment, Long Yanwei's demon pet eggs were probably placed in another place. Otherwise, it wouldn't take so long. However, after thinking about it carefully, he felt that Long Yanwei's arrangement was very correct. As the only contract master in the Penglai Palace, Long Yanwei's reputation and status were extremely resounding. The demon pet eggs were extremely precious treasures. If they were placed in his residence, then some of the large forces might directly launch a sneak attack. Although the vast majority of people did not have such courage, for example, the Crimson Moon sect would not be afraid. If they were really ambushed, then the loss would be unimaginably huge. Therefore, Long Yanwei must have hidden these demon pet eggs in an extremely hidden and safe place. Today happened to be the 10th day. In other words, they had been cultivating in the ocean world for an entire month. After exiting the cultivation state, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three opened the door. They wanted to see if Long Yanwei had sent anyone to inform them today. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three opened the door, they discovered that many cultivators' gazes had landed on them, and these gazes were all somewhat unfriendly. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but frown. His heart was filled with doubts. When they first came to the Penglai Palace, there were also many people sizing them up. However, at that time, although these gazes were filled with curiosity, there were not many unfriendly gazes. They had only been in seclusion for a short 10 days. What happened to make everyone have such a change? Why do I feel that everyone's gazes don't seem to be too friendly? Shangguan Ying looked at the cultivators around them and keenly discovered that these gazes were unusual. She could not help but feel puzzled. You're not the only one who feels this way. I feel the same way. When Xiren nodded in agreement. We've been in closed-door cultivation for the past few days. We haven't done anything that would incur the wrath of the heavens. Di Baichen's eyes flashed with a pondering light. His face quietly became a bit heavier. He said, could it be that the news of us getting the demon pet egg from Master Long spread out? Other than this piece of news, he couldn't think of anything else that could make everyone feel this way about them. Jealousy was an emotion that everyone would have, and the 3 demon pet eggs were enough to make all the disciples jealous. Once this news spread out, it wouldn't be strange for everyone to reveal such an expression. Following Di Baichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two's expressions turned grave. If that was really the case, then the situation would be very bad. Chapter 3346. No matter what, Long Yanwei had suffered a loss in this matter. With Long Yanwei's identity, he would not take the initiative to say this kind of thing because it would be very embarrassing for him. As for the 4 of them, that was even more impossible. From the beginning to the end, they had never told anyone about this matter. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were thinking about what had happened, the mocking voices of other cultivators were heard. I thought these 4 guys were Ninja Turtles. They stayed in the house for so many days without any signs of coming out. Now, they're finally willing to come out. I don't know what's there to be arrogant about. I think they must have used some special method to confuse Master Long to give them 3 demon pet eggs. Even so, there's no need to be so arrogant and ignore everyone's search. Now, this cultivator who just came from the outside world is really arrogant. He just came to the Penglai Palace, and he already doesn't put all of us in his eyes. Didn't you guys say that you don't know how they got Master Long to promise to give them the demon pet eggs? Look at their appearance. Maybe they're using their beauty to serve people. After all, other than their faces, there's nothing outstanding about them. Everyone's words were harsher than the previous one. The mocking voices continued to be heard. It was as if they wanted to belittle Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to the bottom. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, who didn't know what was going on, suddenly had an ugly expression on their faces after hearing such discussions. They had never thought that in just a short period of 10 days, this rumor had already developed to such an extent. Baichen, what you said is right. These guys really know about the demon pet eggs. Xiren's expression was ugly. He had lived for so many years. Which time did he not rely on his own true strength to come here? He was actually mocked by these guys as trash who had nothing but his face. This kind of words, for any man, was a complete insult. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face had a bit of coldness. Everyone's mocking words were too much. However, she did not lose her mind because of everyone's sarcasm. At this time, the angrier you appear, the more you'll fall into the trap of others. These people were most likely waiting for them to take the initiative to find trouble. In this way, these people would definitely join the battle. Right now, they were in a situation where they were alone and without help. If this conflict was stirred up, the ones who would suffer in the end would only be them. I don't know how this news got out, but it seems that during our cultivation process, someone came to find us. We didn't hear it. They thought we were putting on airs and didn't want to pay attention to it. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with wisdom. From the other side's few words of sarcasm, she could also hear some clues. Forget it. Let's go back to the house. Let's wait. Let's wait in the house. Of them. Chapter 33:47. You still say that these four people are geniuses? In my opinion, these four are useless cowards. Haha. After being ridiculed to this extent, they can only return to their rooms dejectedly. What a joke. I'm a little curious as to what the four of them are doing in the same room every day. Could it be that they're up to something shameful? Following this person's words, which were full of hidden meanings, the cultivators all burst into laughter. Inside the room, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three heard the mockery and provocation from outside, and their faces turned ashen. These damn bastards are getting more and more out of hand. Shangwan Yingying's pretty face was flushed red with anger. She had never been humiliated like this before, and this was simply unbearable. Can you still tolerate this? I can't take it anymore. As she spoke, Shangwan Yingying couldn't help but stand up, looking as if she was going to fight the cultivators outside to the death. Seeing Shangwan Yingying's actions, Xiren hurriedly stopped her. Yingying, calm down first. In this situation, being impulsive won't do you any good. But they're really too much, Shangwan Yingying said angrily. Xiren's expression was unusually serious, and he only gave Shangwan Yingying a look. Although Shangwan Yingying was filled with anger, she could only sit down obediently. Although she usually ridiculed Xiren, at this critical moment, she would listen to Xiren's arrangements. These bastards want to take advantage of this opportunity to anger us. Once we explode, they will have a reason to deal with us, so we can't give them any chance. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Shangwan Yingying with a serious expression, and her words were filled with persuasion. Shangwan Yingying frowned slightly. Isn't the outer hall not allowed to prevent cultivators from fighting? If they want to cause trouble for us, they could just come directly to us. Why do they have to go through so much trouble? Yingying, I'm afraid you've lost your mind from anger. Div Beichen shook his head helplessly. They don't dare to do it themselves, but just provoke us verbally. Most likely, they are afraid of Master Long. After all, they don't know what kind of relationship we have with Master Long, so they don't dare to act rashly. However, if we're the ones who take the initiative to provoke them, then they don't need to bear any responsibility. It's all because we newcomers are too arrogant and don't know the rules. When Xiren nodded, I know you're angry. If the other party was only a few cultivators, I would definitely go out and beat them up without saying a word. But there are so many of them. If we attack, we'll be beaten up by the group. We can't do this kind of business where we're clearly at a disadvantage. He was also very angry, but now they were in the Penglai Palace. They were just new disciples and had no foundation here, so they had to be careful with every step they took. That's not all. Every move we make now will be related to Master Long. We have obtained so many benefits from him. We can't cause him trouble as soon as we arrive at Penglai Palace, right? These people can easily link us to Master Long and push our responsibility to Master Long. Chapter 33:48. Shangwan Yingying, who was originally extremely furious, gradually calmed down when she saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two thinking so calmly. She was just blinded by anger and didn't think that there were so many things behind it. At this moment, after being reminded by Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two, she couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. If she had really impulsively provoked the conflict, then their current situation would be even worse. I seem to have been too impulsive. Shangwan Yingying was a bit ashamed. She didn't understand the things that everyone was able to understand. Instead, she needed everyone who was in anger to persuade her. Compared to them, her performance was too terrible. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, Yingying, you've been cultivating in the Cloud Sword sect before. This kind of dirty trick wouldn't be used on you at all. So it's normal that you didn't understand it for a while. Almost every cultivator here has been through many hardships. No matter if it's the methods that can be seen or not, they're all very good at using them. If you think too simply, it's easy to fall into their trap. You'll understand after you've seen more of them. This kind of thing required a certain amount of experience to be able to think clearly. The environment that Shangguan Ying was in before didn't have these kinds of schemes, so she wasn't used to it for a while. Hearing Bailey Hongshuang's comfort, Shangguan Ying nodded. I'll try my best not to be impulsive in the future. It's a good thing that you all understand. Otherwise, this situation would be really terrible. Seeing that Shangguan Ying's state of mind had calmed down, Bailey Hongshuang and the other three started to discuss countermeasures. Although I don't know how the news got out, but it's already like this. There's no use for us to look for the reason. We have to think about what to do next. When Xiren scratched his head with one hand. Originally, he only wanted to keep a low profile and cultivate in the outer hall. He didn't expect that in just a few days, things would escalate to such an extent. It was probably impossible for them to continue cultivating in a low profile. Right now, we have become the focus of everyone's attention. Did you guys notice earlier that the number of cultivators living nearby has obviously increased by a lot? Di Beichan said in a low voice. His handsome face revealed a serious expression. This number was much more than the day they had arrived. Bailey Hongshuang nodded lightly. I've also noticed this point. If I'm not wrong, these guys are most likely waiting for us to receive the demon pet eggs. Since the outer hall doesn't forbid fights, naturally, they won't forbid snatching either. We're just newcomers, and our strength doesn't pose any threat to them at all. Thus, they treat us as soft buns and want to bully us as they wish. Following Bailey Hongshuang's words, Di Beichan and the others' faces darkened once again. As a result, they had to think of a way to protect the demon pet egg. Otherwise, as soon as they left Long Yanwei's place, these cultivators would already be impatient to come out and snatch it. What should we do now? These guys are eyeing us like tigers eyeing their prey. We have no way to escape. Shangguan Ying's face became even uglier. After such analysis, they were completely besieged. Chapter 3349. The only thing we can do now is to bide our time and wait for news from Master Long, Di Beichan muttered to himself. If possible, it's best that we complete the contract with Master Long, otherwise there will be endless trouble. Following Di Beichan's words, Bailey Hongshuang and the other two nodded. At present, they had no other choice but to do this. If it's really troublesome when the time comes, why don't we go directly to the Magic Tower after completing the contract? Anyway, there's no difference between staying here and going to the Magic Tower. It'll save us some trouble here. Xiren pondered and said. It had to be said that when he thought about the cultivators who were eyeing them covetously outside, his scalp felt numb. When they were in the oceanic world, they were often surrounded and attacked by groups of monster beasts. However, they were already used to that kind of siege and did not care at all. However, the number of these guys outside was much more than the monster beasts in the oceanic world. Their strength would also be much stronger. To be honest, they were not afraid of fighting at all. However, if they were to cause a ruckus like this matter would not be ordinary. Hearing this, Di Beichan nodded. When the time comes, we'll see how it goes. If it really doesn't work out, we'll leave first and wait for our strength to increase a little before coming back. I've already remembered the names of those guys who spoke the most outrageous words. Sooner or later, I'll have my revenge today. Shangguan Ying clenched her fists tightly. Although she had calmed down now, this did not mean that she planned to give up. On the contrary, it was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. When the time comes, she would definitely break the teeth of these people and make them speak so rudely again. I'll go with you. The corners of Bailey Hongshuang's lips curled up slightly. Not taking revenge after suffering a loss has never been her principle. On the contrary, 10 times the amount was her principle. Not long after Bailey Hongshuang sorted out her thoughts, there was a knock on the door. Hearing the knocking sound, Bailey Hongshuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other. They didn't know if this person was Long Yanwei's man or someone looking for trouble. Di Beichun was the first to open the door. He saw a man standing outside the door politely. He smiled and said, "Young Master Di, Lord Long asked me to invite you over." Hearing the other party's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they weren't here to cause trouble. However, when the four of them noticed the gazes of some cultivators not far away, their expressions turned solemn again. Their guess was correct. These people were aiming for the demon pet egg. "Then I'll have to trouble you to lead the way," Di Beichun said. "This is what I should do." The man's face was filled with a humble and polite smile. He turned around and led Bailey Hongzhuang and the others towards Long Yanwei's residence. After closing the door, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked behind the cultivator. Along the way, almost everyone's unkind gazes were focused on them. These four guys went to Lord Long's place. I'm afraid they're going to get the demon pet egg. Even if they get the demon pet egg, it still depends on whether they have the ability to protect it. If they don't have that ability, then they're just helping others make a wedding dress. You guys are thinking too simply. Maybe they're not going to get the demon pet egg, but to do something else. Chapter 3350. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three listened to the sarcasm. Their faces were covered with a layer of frost. They suppressed their anger and did not have any conflict with the other party. The man walking in front of Di Beichun naturally also heard the discussion. He couldn't help but say, "The news from before inadvertently spread out. It must have brought you a lot of trouble, right?" Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were slightly stunned. After they reacted, they understood the man's meaning. It seemed that the news was indeed spread from Long Yanwei. "This is our Penglai Palace. Only the inner palace disciples have the qualifications to obtain the demon pet eggs. The outer palace disciples have no qualifications to obtain them. Not only that, even the inner palace disciples are not qualified to obtain the demon pet eggs. You have just become the outer palace disciples of Penglai Palace, and you can obtain the demon pet eggs. Moreover, the four of you can obtain 3 demon pet eggs. If this news spreads, it will naturally cause many people to be jealous. However, in this Penglai Palace, the cultivators with the ability basically walked out under everyone's jealousy. This is a kind of pressure and also a kind of test. I hope you can withstand it." As the man's voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other. They only knew that Long Yanwei was the contract master of Penglai Palace. As for how to obtain the demon pet eggs, they didn't know. Now, after this man's explanation, they also understood. No wonder everyone was so intense. It turned out that the outer palace disciples didn't have the qualifications to obtain the demon pet eggs. In this way, they were indeed too special. Presumably, anyone would be jealous. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with understanding. This matter could only be explained in this way. If every disciple of Penglai Palace had the opportunity to obtain the demon pet eggs, then to what extent would the foundation of Penglai Palace reach? Long Yanwei would also be busy to death. Actually, Master Long is also under a certain amount of pressure for this matter. Giving the outer palace disciples 3 demon pet eggs, this is something that has never happened before. Along the way, this man and Bailey Hongzhuang also talked about a lot of things. It made them understand that although Long Yanwei's position in Penglai Palace was extraordinary, he was also under a certain amount of pressure. Speaking of which, the benefits they were asking for were simply too great. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were extremely grateful to Long Yanwei. However, they did not plan to give up on this opportunity. It wasn't easy to obtain these benefits. So what if he had to pay a price? The benefits that were obtained were the real benefits. When Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 arrived at Long Yanwei's residence, they discovered that other than Long Yanwei, there was another man in his 40s. Let me introduce you. This is Master Zihua. He is a teacher in the inner hall. You will have the chance to meet him in the future, Long Yanwei said with a smile. However, when Long Yanwei saw the true appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, He could not help but be astonished. However, he quickly regained his composure. Previously, he had only seen through the disguises on the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, but he did not expect their true appearances to be so outstanding. Chapter 3351. Listening to Long Yanwei's introduction, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately bowed to Hua and said, "Greetings, Master Yi." Hua smiled faintly and sized up Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. He smiled and said, "We're all on the same side. There's no need to be restrained." Seeing that Hua was so approachable, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were a little surprised. It seemed that birds of a feather flocked together. Long Yanwei and Hua were both people with extremely good personalities. "I've already heard about your matter. To be able to take advantage of Master Long, this is not easy. You have a future." Hua gave Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three a thumbs up. However, when he looked at Long Yanwei, he was clearly a little more teasing. Long Yanwei looked at Hua speechlessly. This guy had been teasing him for a long time because of this matter. He didn't expect that he would do such a thing at this moment. "I'm afraid that you guys have also been deeply disturbed these past few days, right?" Long Yanwei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. His expression revealed some helplessness. "This news was leaked by my subordinates. It was beyond my expectations. I'm really sorry." Long Yanwei also felt very helpless about this matter. Originally, this demon pet egg was the condition that he voluntarily offered when he recruited Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. He knew too well what kind of turmoil this matter would cause in the outer palace once it was spread out. Not only the outer palace, but presumably the disciples of the inner palace would not be indifferent after hearing this news. He did not plan to announce this news at all. He only wanted to watch Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three gradually grow up. When they became disciples of the inner palace and had enough confidence to obtain the demon pet egg, it would not be too late to say it. However, he did not expect that his subordinates would be so loose with their mouths. He had only left for a few days, and this news had already spread throughout the outer palace. He was very clear that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were just disciples who had just arrived in the outer hall. As a result, they were undoubtedly the enemy of all the disciples. If they wanted to continue staying here, it would not be an easy thing. In the end, the root cause of this matter was his mistake. After he knew that this matter was leaked by his subordinates, he did not hesitate to drive the other party out of the Penglai Palace. For such a loose-mouthed subordinate, continuing to keep him would only cause more trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were originally very angry about who leaked the news. Now that Long Yanwei admitted it and apologized, the anger in their hearts dissipated. In fact, they also knew that Long Yanwei had been out all this time and had just returned. In the end, this matter was just a problem with his subordinates. However, his attitude still comforted Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. "Lord Long, you don't have to take this matter to heart. Although this news has spread, it is the truth. Since we have the courage to accept this demon pet egg, we are naturally prepared to bear all of this." Di Beichen's eyes were filled with determination and calmness. Since it had already happened, it was useless for them to care about other things. Perhaps this was a test for them. Chapter 3352. Seeing the calm and indifferent attitude of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, Long Yanwei and Hua couldn't help but look at each other. Their hearts were filled with astonishment, but more than that, they were filled with admiration. It seemed that their previous judgment was correct. These four little fellows had such a temperament and outstanding talent. Their future achievements would probably not be small. I really didn't misjudge you guys. Just based on the debt I owe you in this matter, the demon pet eggs I gave you guys can't be bad. Long Yanwei's face was filled with a thick smile. If it was said that he felt very helpless because he was cheated before, then after hearing the answer of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, the trace of unhappiness in his heart had completely disappeared. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were only at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three felt that it was his investment. This time, he believed that his eyes wouldn't be wrong, so he was willing to take out the demon pet eggs that he had collected. After all, a powerful contract beast also needed a powerful master in order to make it grow better. Bailey Hongzhuang was young, but the strength of her demon pet was strong to such an extent. That sharp gaze and firm will to fight had an inseparable relationship with its master. The longer the contract beast followed its master, the more similar it would become to its master. Therefore, just by looking at the appearance of the contract beast, one would be able to know its master's personality. Izihua, who was at the side, was silent, but in his heart, he already knew Long Yanwei's plan. This time, when he accompanied Long Yanwei to get the demon pet eggs, Long Yanwei chose a total of 6 demon pet eggs. 3 of them were ordinary demon pet eggs, while the other 3 were extremely outstanding demon pet eggs. Of course, this was only normal in Long Yanwei's eyes. This kind of demon pet egg was also worthy of a 5th-level Purple Realm cultivator. Once it was taken out, it would be a situation where everyone would go crazy for it. He always felt that Long Yanwei was very generous to choose these 3 demon pet eggs to Di, Beichen, and the other 2. However, he never understood the reason why Long Yanwei brought the other 3 demon pet eggs. A demon pet egg of that level. Every time, the palace master would have to spend a lot of effort to trick it away. When he asked Long Yanwei only said that he didn't know and only had a vague premonition. When they returned, they found out that something like this had happened. They couldn't help but curse in their hearts. Right now, the calm attitude displayed by Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 clearly made Long Yanwei extremely appreciative. However, Izihua still couldn't figure out why they would take out such a valuable demon pet egg. However, he wouldn't stop Long Yanwei's decision. Perhaps Long Yanwei and the 4 little fellows really hit it off, or perhaps Long Yanwei thought highly of the 4 little fellows from the bottom of his heart, so he was willing to take the risk and invest in them. Hearing Long Yanwei's words, Deep Beichin and the others' eyes couldn't help but light up. In that case, the level of the demon pet eggs that Long Yanwei gave them would definitely not be low. Thank you, Lord Long. When Xiren took the lead to express his gratitude, Lord Long had already made it so obvious. Naturally, his flattery had to be timely. Di Beichin and the others also secretly laughed in their hearts. Misfortune and fortune depended on each other. In this world, trouble and opportunity often coexisted. If they didn't inexplicably get into such trouble, they probably wouldn't be able to have such a better contract beast. Chapter 3353. The trouble could be solved sooner or later, but there is only one chance for this contract. The higher the grade of the contract beast, it means that its growth speed and development space will be greater. In the long run, the gap between the two can be completely highlighted. Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contract beasts were able to develop to such an extent, it was inseparable from their own quality. If it was an ordinary contract beast, even if more resources were spent to cultivate, the final harvest would not be comparable to Baisher, Xiaohe, and Xiaobai. It seems that while they suffered a loss, they also gained an advantage. Looking at Xiren's appearance of climbing up the pole, Long Yue couldn't help but chuckle. The guy who took the initiative to trap him was Xiren, but this guy didn't have any awareness at all. In the next second, Long Yanwei directly took out 3 demon pet eggs and placed them on the table. Seeing the sudden appearance of the demon pet eggs, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' gazes were all attracted by the demon pet eggs. The oval demon pet eggs had mysterious and complex contract totems drawn on them, and in this demon pet egg, there was a contract beast that belonged to them. Bailey Hongzhuang paid attention to the demon pet eggs in front of her. The size of this demon pet egg was obviously several times larger than the one when Baisher was hatched. Speaking of which, as a beast king, Baisher's body should be very huge, but everyone didn't know enough about the beast king, so no one recognized that the sealed demon pet egg was actually a Beast King. In fact, the Beast King had never been sealed, so it was very normal that everyone didn't know. If not, Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't have been able to pick up such a big bargain. Let me introduce to you. These 3 demon pet eggs were carefully selected by me for you. I have seen your battle once, and according to your performance in the battle, I selected these 3 demon pet eggs. I believe that with the help of the contract beasts, your battle will be like a tiger that has grown wings. Long Yanwei's face had a faint smile. When talking about these 3 demon pet eggs, the pride on his face was even more obvious. As a contract master, he had always been proud of his demon pet eggs. In the entire Penglai Island, there was no one who could compare with him in contract technique. Hearing Long Yanwei's proud words, Di Beichen and the others also had a look of anticipation on their faces. With Long Yanwei's eyesight, this quality would definitely not be low, and it was a contract beast that was specially found for them. It would definitely be very impressive. I chose this demon pet egg for you. Long Yanwei's gaze landed on Xiren. The Berserk Earth-Splitting Tiger is sealed here. Hearing Long Yanwei's words, Xiren's eyes couldn't help but light up. He had heard of the Berserk Earth-Shattering Tiger before. It was a strength-type demonic beast. Its movements were extremely swift and violent. When it fought, it was even more manic. It had extremely strong battle instincts. To male cultivators, the Berserk Earth-Shaking Tiger was definitely one of the top few contracted beasts that they wanted. I have observed your fighting style. Your speed is more than enough, but your strength is lacking. If this Berserk Earth-Shaking Tiger is developed, it will be able to make up for your shortcomings in battle. You're good at speed, it is good at strength. Once you combine them and use them well, your fighting strength will increase by a lot. What do you think? Chapter 3354. Xiren's eyes blossomed with a strong light. He nodded and said, "Satisfied? I'm really satisfied." Although Long Yanwei had promised to give them a suitable contract beast, he never thought that it would be so suitable. He had some understanding of his flaws in combat, and he had always wanted to make up for his lack of strength. However, his old man had also said that he was born to be a speed-type cultivator, and his improvement in strength was far from being able to keep up with his speed. Instead of spending more time on strength, it was better to put all of his energy into cultivating speed. As long as his speed could reach the peak, then even if there was a lack of strength, the impact wouldn't be too big. If he could find a strength-type contract beast in the future, it would undoubtedly be best. All these years, Xiren had always wanted to find such a contract beast. However, there were too few contract beasts that met the requirements. The Berserk Earth-Splitting Tiger was the target of his attention. He always felt that the Berserk Earth-Splitting Tiger was most suitable to be his contract beast. Unfortunately, after searching for so many years, he still couldn't find a Berserk Earth-Splitting Tiger's demon pet egg. Firstly, it was because the adult Berserk Earth-Splitting Tiger's strength was extraordinary. Ordinary cultivators couldn't deal with it at all. Secondly, it was because the Berserk Earth-Splitting Tiger's level was very high. To seal it, the requirement for the contractor were also very high. He never thought that after coming to Penglai Island, he would be able to get a Berserk Earth-Splitting Tiger's demon pet egg. This was simply something that he yearned for even in his dreams. For a moment, Xiren's gaze was tightly focused on the demon pet egg. That loving gaze was simply like looking at his lover. Seeing that Xiren was so satisfied, the smile on Long Yanwei's lips couldn't help but become a bit wider. Every time he took out a demon pet egg, he was satisfied with it. Seeing that the other party liked it, he undoubtedly felt happy. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others knew that Xiren's contract beast was actually a Berserk Earth-Splitting Tiger, their hearts couldn't help but surge with a strong sense of surprise. A contract beast of this level was much better than what they had imagined. It seemed that what Long Yanwei said before was not wrong at all. In order to make up for it, the demon pet eggs that Long Yanwei took out were not ordinary. And after knowing about Xiren's demon pet egg, everyone was looking forward to Shangguan Yingying and Di Beichen's demon pet egg even more. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on Long Yanwei, and she couldn't help but admire him. Long Yanwei was indeed worthy of being the most powerful contract master in Penlai Island. Not only was his ability to seal demon beasts amazing, but he also paid special attention to the shortcomings of the cultivator when choosing the contract beast for the cultivator. From this, he could determine the most suitable demon beast for the cultivator. In this way, the contract beast and the cultivator were more than compatible. This was the most suitable combination. Shangguan Yingying, the contract beast I chose for you, is the deep-sea devil flood dragon. There are many of them in the sea area of our Penlai Island, so the beasts we see the most are underwater beasts. However, the deep-sea demonic Jiao dragon was a bit different from ordinary underwater monsters. It was an amphibious monster, which meant that it had a certain amount of combat power whether it was in the sea or on land. Chapter 33:55. The deep-sea demonic flood dragon's fighting strength in the sea is much stronger than on land. Back then, we spent a lot of effort to capture the deep-sea demonic flood dragon's offspring. Speaking up to here, Long Yanwei couldn't help but look at Izihua. Back then, the two of them had worked together to capture the deep-sea demonic flood dragon's offspring. In order to deal with the adult deep-sea demonic flood dragon, the two of them had spent a lot of effort. This was because this fellow's defense was too shocking and its strength was too great. Ordinary people really couldn't deal with it in the sea. Hearing Long Yanwei's introduction, Shangguan Yingying's eyes were filled with little stars. This was her contracted beast. Although she didn't know much about the deep-sea demonic flood dragon, she knew that this deep-sea demonic flood dragon was definitely not simple from Long Yanwei's introduction. Most importantly, the deep-sea demonic flood dragon was good at defense. This was undoubtedly the biggest help to her. Moreover, Xiren's berserk earth-splitting tiger was extremely strong on land. Her deep-sea demonic flood dragon was extremely strong in the sea. Just this amphibious characteristic alone was already something that ordinary contracted beasts couldn't compare to. Thank you, Master Long. Shangguan Yingying quickly bowed to Long Yanwei. Her face was filled with a pleasantly surprised smile. She couldn't retract the smile on her lips. Not only Shangguan Yingying, but Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were also delighted. They were worried that their contracted beasts' fighting strength would be greatly reduced in the sea. They didn't expect Shangguan Yingying to have a Yao beast that was suitable for underwater combat. After the deep-sea demonic flood dragon reached adulthood, its body would become extremely large. If it could carry them, they wouldn't need a boat at all. Whether it was speed or safety, it would greatly increase. In the end, Long Yanwei's gaze fell on Di Beichen. Di Beichen, according to my understanding of you, I didn't find any shortcomings in your battles. In other words, you're a comprehensive fighter. Whether it's strength, speed, or defense, you've developed in a balanced manner. Therefore, when I was choosing a contracted beast for you, I didn't deliberately focus on any one aspect. Instead, I chose a Yao beast that also developed in a balanced manner. Previously, when he was watching the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, Long Yanwei had always thought that the white lion was Di Beichen's contract beast. Therefore, he had focused on the battle between Di Beichen and Gao Hanshan. Many cultivators had their own direction of development, such as strength, speed, or defense. However, there was another type of cultivator that focused on balanced development. The characteristic of a well-rounded and balanced development was that he was not particularly good in any aspect, but at the same time, he did not have any shortcomings. This kind of cultivator was the strongest in a one-on-one battle, while cultivators with more focus would perform better in a group battle. As far as Long Yanwei was concerned, he admired cultivators who were all-round. However, there were not many such cultivators. However, it was very coincidental that whether it was Di Beichen or Bailey Hongzhuang, both of them were well-rounded cultivators. In addition to one Xiren who was good at speed and Shangguan Yingying who was good at strength, they were a very compatible combination. Hearing Long Yanwei's words, Di Beichen also nodded. He also had a certain understanding of his own situation. Chapter 3356. All-round development meant that he needed to put in more effort and time. However, Bei-chun did not care about this. No matter how much effort he had to put in, it was fine as long as he could become stronger in the end. In order to allow him to develop in a balanced way, his master had made many cultivation plans for him since he was young. That was why he had developed to his current state. The mysterious Fire Devil Rock is an all-round monster beast. Its strength, speed, and defense are all developed. No matter which aspect it is, there is no fault to be found. However, because it is very well-rounded, there is nothing special about it. I believe you are very clear about this, right? Hearing this, Bei-chun nodded slightly. He was a cultivator himself, so he was very clear about such characteristics. No matter what kind of cultivation method it was, each had its own benefits. He felt that he and the mysterious Fire Devil Rock were undoubtedly very suitable. In this way, it meant that he and the mysterious Fire Devil Rock could fight separately. Just like Bailey Hongzhuang and Bai Shi, they belong to the same type. The mysterious Fire Devil Rock's body is very large and has the ability to fly. In this way, your small team can be considered to be completely balanced. The smile on Long Yanwei's lips gradually widened. When he was considering the battle characteristics of Bei-chun and the other two, he had also considered their small team of 4. After Long Yanwei's reminder, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two finally understood that Long Yanwei had helped them consider this. Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contracted beasts were all good at fighting on land. Sometimes, they often felt that it would be best if they had a flying monster beast to help them. A flying monster beast could directly carry them in the air, greatly reducing the travel time. And after arriving at Panlai Island, they felt that if they had a marine contracted beast, it would be of great help to them. They never thought that with Long Yanwei's help, they would be able to accomplish this. It was simply a huge surprise for them. Master Long, thank you so much. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 bowed to Long Yanwei at the same time. This help was simply too great. This kind of gratitude was not something that could be expressed with just words. They had never thought that Long Yanwei would actually help them so thoroughly. If these 3 demon pet eggs were to be taken out, then they would truly be priceless treasures. Once this contracted beast grew up, it would be of great help to them. It would be a complete upgrade to their overall strength. Although Zihuan knew that the level of the demon pet eggs that Long Yanwei gave to Bei-chun and the other 2 wasn't bad, he never thought that Long Yanwei would actually consider them to such an extent. It was truly beyond his expectations. When Long Yanwei helped a cultivator choose a contract beast, he would always carefully choose the most suitable one. However, it was rare for him to be so attentive. You are all recruited by me. To be honest, although there are many talented cultivators on Panlai Island, there are very few cultivators that can catch my eye. Although you are still very young, I believe that as long as you continue to develop, you will definitely make a name for yourselves in Panlai Palace. I hope you will not disappoint me. Chapter 3357. Hearing Long Yanwei's words that came from the bottom of his heart, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also understood his deep meaning. Although they did not understand why Long Yanwei thought so highly of them, they understood that no matter what, they did not want to disappoint Long Yanwei's expectations of them. Master Long, don't worry. We will definitely not disappoint you. A strong sense of seriousness and determination appeared on the faces of the 4 of them. If it was said that they did not have any sense of belonging to the Panlai Palace before, but now, just based on the friendship that Long Yanwei had towards them, they had to perform well. Otherwise, they would be letting Long Yanwei down. They had never thought of themselves as good people, but repaying kindness had always been their code of conduct. Long Yanwei and them were only strangers who had met by chance. He had only recruited them because he had taken a fancy to their potential. After being cheated, he still spared no effort to think for them. If Long Yanwei's reputation was damaged because of them, then they would be too weak. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three made up their minds. They would definitely perform better in the Penglai Palace. Since everyone had already pulled them together with Master Long, then they had to at least become an existence that would make Master Long proud. Looking at the serious expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, a hint of gratification appeared in Long Yanwei's eyes. He smiled faintly and said, "Then I'll look forward to your performance. Master Long, I wonder if we can complete the contract here before leaving?" At this moment, Di Baichen slowly spoke out his thoughts. Right now, the disciples of the Outer Palace were all eyeing them covetously. Presumably, there were many cultivators waiting for them to return. If they did not complete the contract, then it would be a chaotic battle the moment they left. It was not that they did not have the confidence to protect the demon pet egg, but that way, there would be a lot of trouble. Most importantly, if they killed too many cultivators, the impact would not be too good. As Di Baichen's voice fell, Long Yanwei immediately smiled and nodded. "No problem. That was my original plan." In the next moment, Long Yanwei waved his hand, and the cultivator who led Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three here entered. He immediately led Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three to the house next door. After Di Baichen and the others left, Yizihua looked at Long Yanwei in surprise. "Yanwei, isn't the price you paid this time a little too great? Even I don't understand it." Such treatment was something that even the most outstanding disciples of the Inner Palace might not be able to enjoy. Yet, Long Yanwei had given it to 3 Outer Palace disciples who had just arrived. When this news spread out, not to mention the Outer Palace disciples, even other people would definitely think that Long Yanwei had gone mad. Hearing this, Long Yanwei chuckled. "I feel that these 4 little fellows are very interesting. Just like the first time I met them, they are a little smart, but the integrity in their bones has always existed. In any case, I've already suffered a loss, so what does it matter if this loss is a little bigger? This time, I want to bet on my foresight. I keep having the feeling that they will bring me a surprise." Chapter 3358. However, there's one thing that I agree with you. These 4 little guys do have a lot of potential. Yizihua couldn't help but recall the performance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 just now. That gratitude came from the bottom of his heart. Of course, every cultivator who obtained a demon pet egg from Long Yanwei would feel grateful to Long Yanwei. However, the degree of gratitude was somewhat different. Just now, he clearly saw the thick seriousness from Di Baichen and the other 3's expressions. Obviously, they really treated Long Yanwei as their benefactor. Not only that, these 4 little guys are also people who value friendship and righteousness. Long Yanwei's lips curled into a slight smile. 3 demon pet eggs to gain affection. It's hard to say which one is more precious. Yizihua nodded his head. From these little fellows, I can indeed see a seriousness and affection that those cultivators do not have. I will look forward to seeing that you have made the right bet this time. However, when the palace master finds out about this matter and comes to find trouble with you, you better not drag me along with you." Most of the cultivators in Penglai Island had climbed all the way up. They had experienced too many betrayals and betrayals. Therefore, although it seemed like a large group of people were still together, many people's hearts were closed and didn't believe in anyone. Even to their benefactor, they could betray them at any time. Because they had experienced too much when they were enduring this betrayal and being betrayed, everyone had a certain awareness. However, to be in this kind of situation all year round, it was unavoidably disappointing. However, from Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, they saw a kind of passion and loyalty that they hadn't seen for a long time. At the very least, they believed that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 had absolute trust between them. This time, only Di Baichen and the other 2 obtained a demon pet egg. However, from the beginning to the end, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't reveal the slightest bit of jealousy and envy. On the contrary, she was only sincerely happy for Di Baichen and the other 2. This proved that she was thinking about the whole team and not herself. This kind of sincerity, even if one wanted to fake it, it couldn't be faked. After hearing Izihua's words, Long Yanwei's face, which was originally full of smiles, couldn't help but collapse. He said, "Zihua, I just said that I'm loyal to my friends. You can't just abandon me like this." After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three closed the door, everyone's face was filled with joy. "Oh my God, I feel so blessed that such a good thing actually fell on my head." Shang Guanying's face was filled with joy. She pulled Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "Hongzhuang, quickly pinch me so that I can judge whether I'm dreaming or not." Is. Really? Shang Guanying's face was still filled with disbelief. Deep Sea Devil Dragon. Just hearing this name makes me feel that it's amazing. In the future, I will also have a contract beast. Di Beichen and Wen Ziren were also in a state of excitement. Master Long has done us a great favor. As long as we cultivate this contract beast, our future fighting strength will be greatly increased. Chapter 33:59. Under such circumstances, if anyone dared to underestimate them, they would definitely suffer. From the looks of it, Master Long must have been under a lot of pressure to take out these 3 demon pet eggs. In fact, if this news were to spread out, it would have a great impact on us, but it would also have a great impact on Master Long. Her ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a wise and far-sighted light. Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face quietly revealed a hint of seriousness. Everyone had been guessing what kind of relationship they had with Master Long. The 4 of them were just newcomers who had just arrived at the Penglai Palace. In fact, other than being a little unpleasant, this kind of slander didn't have much of an impact on them. However, Master Long was different from them. Master Long's position in the Penglai Palace was extremely high. His reputation had always been very good. Now, he was being questioned just because he helped them. Speaking of which, this trouble was brought by them. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen and the other two's eyes darkened. This was indeed a big problem. This kind of rumor can't be eliminated in a short period of time. Only after we show enough strength can we suppress all these rumors. Thinking about it, Master Long should also be aware of this, which is why he said such words to us. Di Beichun pursed his thin lips and comforted everyone. When Ziren shrugged, "Now that things have developed to this point, we'll just use our ability to shut those annoying guys up." With Master Long's character, I'm afraid he's not afraid of these rumors at all. If he really cared, he wouldn't have given us these demon pet eggs now. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head lightly. A smile once again appeared on her face. Right now, the most important thing is to complete the contract. Don't think about other things. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen and the others' gazes also fell on the demon pet eggs in front of them. In the next second, the 4 of them couldn't help but look at each other and began to contract with the demon pet eggs. Bailey Hongzhuang stayed quietly at the side to protect everyone. Although the contract process was simple, they couldn't be disturbed by others. Di Beichen and the other 2 all cut their fingers and dripped their blood onto the demon pet egg. As the fresh blood gradually dripped down, the demonic pet egg seemed to be able to absorb it. Following the wound, it unceasingly absorbed the blood. At the same time, a mysterious and complex totem appeared on the demonic pet egg shell. It was the totem of a contract. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and White Lion stayed beside Bailey Hongzhuang. Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked at the demon pet eggs in front of Di Beichen and the other 2, and then looked at White Lion beside them. They couldn't help but say, "White Lion, you're a beast king after all. Why was your demon pet egg so small back then?" Compared to it, your demon pet egg really doesn't have any imposing manner at all. Xiao He clicked her tongue and shook her head. She had a look of disdain. Concentration is the essence. I was called cute back then, okay? White Lion said with dissatisfaction. How would it know why its demon pet egg was smaller in size? Cute your head. Xiao Hei curled her lips. We almost thought that you were an ornamental demon beast. Master thought that he had wasted an opportunity. Ha ha. Chapter 3360. It's just that when Bailey Hongzhuang said this sentence, she was somewhat guilty. Back then in Fengbo country, she didn't expect the royal family of Fengbo country to give such a good demon pet egg. However, at that time, she also needed to increase her cultivation. In addition, there was no limit to the number of contracted beasts, so she made the contract. Now that she thought about it, her luck back then was really good. If she gave up on the contract because she felt that the level of the contracted beast sealed inside was too low, then she would really be screwed. After getting Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, Baisha revealed a comfortable smile and raised his eyebrows at Xiao Hei to express his dissatisfaction. At least I still have a demon pet egg. You guys don't even have it at that time. Look at you guys now. If there's a demon pet egg, it's probably only the size of fingernail, right? Baisha smiled contemptuously. These two guys always liked to attack him. Speaking of which, he was curious about Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's demon pet egg. Hearing Baisha's words, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai couldn't help but be stunned. After looking at each other, they felt that Baisha's words weren't without reason. Not only Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai, but Bailey Hongzhuang also had the same feeling. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's figures had always been so small. If they were sealed into demon pet eggs, then they would be even smaller than a quail egg. Thinking of this, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai suddenly fell into silence. This topic wasn't suitable for them to continue talking about. It was better to change the topic. Just as the three beasts were chatting, Di Beichin and the other two had already completed the contract. Then, the sound of an eggshell cracking rang out. Kacha, kacha, kacha. Following the sound of the first eggshell cracking, the other two demon pet eggs also emitted the sound of eggshell cracking. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately walked to Di Beichin's side and curiously looked at the appearance of these little guys being born. No matter what kind of demonic beast it was, it looked very cute when it was young. Di Beichin's mystical fire demon rock was the first to break the shell. Its small mouth pecked and ate the eggshell. Although its mouth was very small, it was very fast. In the blink of an eye, it had finished eating the entire eggshell. After eating the eggshell, the little fellow couldn't help but rub its round belly with its wings. Only then did a satisfied smile appear on its face. At this moment, the little guy looked at Di Beichin and immediately snuggled into Di Beichin's arms. With the existence of the contract, even if it was just born, it would know who its closest master was. The little guy was currently brown all over. Although he was just born, his size was not small. However, his childish appearance was still very cute. When Di Beichin saw the little guy, a big smile appeared on his face. He could feel the connection between him and the little guy, as if they were family. He liked the little guy from the bottom of his heart. This little guy is very affectionate towards you. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was full of smiles. Looking at the mystical fire demon rock that was unwilling to come out from Di Beichin's arms, she only felt that it was very cute. At the same time, Xiren and Shangguan Yingying's contracted beasts also finished eating the eggshell and ran out one after another. Xiren's wild earth-splitting tiger was the size of a puppy. However, it wasn't a newborn puppy, but an adult puppy. Chapter 3361. An adult berserk, earth-shattering tiger was a very domineering existence. However, this cub had a different kind of cuteness. It didn't have too much might or domineering aura. It only had a little childish voice in its heroic spirit, which made people unable to resist it. Shangguan Yingying's deep-sea, demonic Jiao dragon looked like a mysterious snake. Its body was covered with tiny scales, but it looked very shiny. Under the sunlight, it reflected a bit of dark light. It was not simple. At this moment, the deep-sea demonic Jiao dragon was wrapped around Shangguan Yingying's arm. It looked very intimate. If it was any other day, Shangwan Yingying would definitely feel her scalp go numb when she saw the deep-sea demonic Jiao dragon. However, she had an indescribable feeling of intimacy and joy towards the deep-sea demonic Jiao dragon in front of her. This feeling of being in perfect harmony was like seeing one's closest kin. There was no rejection at all. It felt as if the man and the beast were connected and became a whole. This feeling is really magical. It's clearly my first time seeing it, but it's not just a normal kind of intimacy. Shangwan Yingying's eyes flashed with amazement. Originally, she was worried about how to get along with this little guy and how to cultivate their relationship. However, after the contract was completed, she felt that all of this was no longer necessary. Even though it was their first time meeting, she felt that they had been together for a long time and understood each other very well. Hearing Shangwan Yingying's words, Xiren also nodded in agreement. Indeed, I've heard others talk about this feeling before. Now that I've experienced it myself, I truly feel how magical this feeling is. Di Beichen's handsome face revealed a joyful and gentle smile. The little guy in his arms really had a different kind of cuteness. Back then, Baisher was also like this when it stuck to Bailey Hongzhuang's arms all day long. They've just been born. I'm afraid they're still a little unfamiliar with the outside world. You should accompany them for the next 2 days. Bailey Hongzhuang was full of smiles. These little guys were usually sealed not long after they were born. In addition, the first person they saw was their master. Therefore, they had the feeling that their master was their parent. When they were just born, they were the most clingy. However, demonic beasts always had the nature of demonic beasts. As long as they were familiar with the environment, their courage would also show. Hearing this, Di Beichen and the other two nodded with a smile. Presumably, having these little fellows by their side in the future would be a different experience. In my opinion, you don't have to keep them in your contract space anymore. Just keep them in your chaos ring. The chaos ring's range of activity is very large. White Lion, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai can also help to look after it and cultivate their friendship at the same time. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on Bai Shi, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai. Her exquisite and beautiful face flashed with an elegant smile. Since they were on such good terms, it was only natural for their contracted beasts to be on good terms with each other as well. It just so happened that Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and White Lion were usually busy bickering. It was undoubtedly the best choice to leave the three little fellows in their care. This could be considered as giving them something to do. Chapter 3362. Currently, they were in troubled times in the Penglai Palace. There were many troublesome matters, and it would not be convenient for them to split their attention to take care of the three little ones. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had 3 extremely powerful contract beasts. It was more than appropriate to give them the contract beasts. Not bad, not bad. It just so happens that Xiao He and Xiao Bai don't have much to do. This nanny mission is very suitable for them. Shangwan Yingying was full of smiles. She could not bear to let her contract beasts suffer with her as soon as they were born. Who knew if they would be in big trouble if they went out now? Bai Shi, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang with a bitter expression. Master, nannies don't seem to be suitable for us, right? You haven't done it before. How do you know it's not suitable for you? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. I think this kind of thing is very suitable for you. You're all contract beasts. It should be easy for you to get along. Moreover, Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and how Bai Shi grew up, don't you know very well? The 3 beasts were collectively speechless. So it was useless no matter what they said now. I think this suggestion is very good. It's decided then. In the end, Di Beichen directly made the decision, leaving the 3 beasts with no chance to refute. After Di Beichen and the other 2 completed the contract, they appeared in front of Long Yanwei together. Long Yanwei looked at the little ones in Di Beichen and the other 2's arms and could not help but smile. It seems that these 3 little ones are very satisfied with you. Thank you, Master Long. These contract beasts are really in line with what we have in mind. Di Beichen and the other two could not help but speak up. Long Yanwei smiled faintly. It is also my wish to be able to help these little ones find suitable masters. Now that I look at these three little ones, I can't help but think of the scene when they were sealed. Almost every time he tried to snatch a demonic beast cub, he would be hunted down by the parents of the demonic beasts. It was not easy to successfully snatch a demonic beast cub. Actually, the process of snatching the cubs of the demonic beasts was not very pleasant. On the contrary, there was a trace of guilt. However, every time he saw the intimacy between the cubs and the cultivators, he would feel much better. He didn't want to ruin the future of the demonic beasts because of this. Instead, he wanted to give them a different kind of life. He only hoped that they would feel that it was very good. Izihuan nodded slightly. He understood Long Yanwei's feelings. Almost every time Long Yanwei went out to look for young demonic beasts, he would call him along. Therefore, he understood the process very well. Among the people present, other than Izihua and Long Yanwei, there was another person who understood this feeling very well. This person was Bailey Hongzhuang. She was also a sealing master, but she didn't focus on sealing. She chose to learn sealing techniques because she wanted to help herself. Since the contract has been completed, we will take our leave first. Di Beichun said slowly. There was nothing else for them to do if they continued to stay here. It was better not to disturb Long Yanwei and Bailey Hongzhuang. At this time, Izihua's voice also sounded. I'm afraid that you will be in a lot of trouble if you go out now. Do you want me to send someone to help you solve this problem? Chapter 3363. Just by thinking about it, Izihua could guess what kind of situation they would encounter when they went out. Penglai Palace originally encouraged the cultivators to learn from each other. As long as there was a conflict, there was no need to endure it all. They could just attack directly. This kind of robbery was naturally within the permitted scope. Even if Di Beichen and the other two had already completed the contract and it was impossible for the other cultivators to rob them, it was still very simple to trigger a battle. What Long Yanwei did this time was really crazy, so this battle would probably be unprecedentedly fierce. Hearing Izihua's proposal, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other and finally chose to refuse. Master Yi, thank you for your kindness. But since this matter was caused by us, we will use our own means to solve it. As long as Master Yi spoke, the other cultivators would naturally not dare to do anything to them. However, this way, their reputation of not having true ability would be even more firmly pinned. They had already decided that they could no longer implicate Long Yanwei, so naturally, they could no longer be under the protection of Long Yanwei and Izihua. They would have to face what they had to face sooner or later. If they were to shrink back now, their lives in the outer palace would be difficult in the future. Instead of being scolded as cowards, they might as well fight like this. No matter what the final result was, at least it would prove their true ability. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's answer was obviously beyond Izihua's expectations. The current situation was very troublesome even for him. It was undoubtedly best for him to come forward and settle this conflict. He did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three to unanimously choose to refuse. Although it was somewhat difficult to understand his heart, Izihua had to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's decision made him admire them more. Cultivators should have such a backbone. Although there were many troubles, as long as these troubles were solved one by one, the achievements after overcoming all obstacles would definitely not be comparable to ordinary people. Are you sure? Long Yanwei could not help but ask. With your current ability, it is very troublesome to face this. As the saying goes, 10 years is not too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Don't be too impulsive. Hearing the concern in Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but feel touched. At the same time, the thoughts in their hearts became even more resolute. Long Yanwei had already done so much for them. How could they let Long Yanwei continue to worry about them? If this continued, then the four of them would really become cripples. Thank you for your concern. We'll think of a way to deal with it ourselves. Di Beichen and the other three insisted on their own way of thinking. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had already made up their minds, Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua did not say anything more. It was likely that they already had their own plans in their hearts. Then be careful. If there's anything you need our help with, don't mind it. Just tell us directly, Long Yanwei said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three bowed and thanked Long Yanwei again before leaving his residence. After leaving Long Yanwei's residence, the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were once again covered with a grave expression. Chapter 33-64. In fact, she felt that this was the best way. Otherwise, once they went out, there was no way to solve this problem except by fighting. Most importantly, even if she was very confident in their strength, they couldn't handle the other side's numbers. The final result was hard to imagine, even for herself. However, at that time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's attitude was unusually firm, so she didn't say anything more. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang said in a deep voice, "Master Long has put his chips on us this time. If we can't give a satisfactory answer and need to ask for his help, it's equivalent to saying that we can't do it." They all knew very well that although Master Long said that they could ask for his help if they couldn't solve it, if they really went to Master Long for help, then their impression in Master Long's heart would be greatly reduced. This kind of thing, if not as a last resort, they would never do it. Long Yanwei's status was higher than theirs. In other words, Long Yanwei couldn't get anything in return from them. The two were not equal. As the saying goes, if a big shot's verbal promise was used once, then he wouldn't even have the right to speak in the future. Shangguan Yingying frowned. But if we go out now, this matter will be very difficult to handle. With that, Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but look at Xiren and Di Beichun. Do you have any plans? Are we going to stay in Penglai Palace or go to the Magic Tower? Stay in Penglai Palace. Di Beichun and Xiren gave a definite answer without hesitation. Seeing this, Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but be stunned. This attitude was completely different from before they came here. Now we can only fight. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a serious and dignified light. At present, they had no other choice but to go with this road. Originally, they planned to simply leave, but Long Yanwei had given them such a great favor. If they left like this, it would undoubtedly give everyone a reason to laugh at Long Yanwei. Therefore, after seeing the value of these three contract beasts, they had changed their minds. No matter how difficult their life in the outer palace was, they had to persevere. That's right. We have to give it our all in today's match. As long as we show enough ability, it will be enough, Di Beichun said in a deep voice. Shangguan Yingying frowned. Can you tell me what you plan to do? We can't deal with so many cultivators with our current strength. Anyone who heard the news that the four of them wanted to deal with so many cultivators from the outer palace would think that they were crazy. Looking at Shangguan Yingying's puzzled and anxious look, Xiren couldn't help but chuckle and immediately explained to Shangguan Yingying. Yingying, actually, this matter isn't as bad as you think. Shangguan Yingying still looked at Xiren with a puzzled expression. She was simply confused. They were the ones who said it was bad, and now they were the ones who said it wasn't so bad. What exactly was the situation in front of them? If we go out now, a battle is indeed unavoidable. However, there are still people in charge of the outer palace. When the commotion reaches a certain level, it will be time for them to step in. Chapter 33-65. What's the difference between asking Master Long and Master Yi for help if the manager shows up? Isn't it the same? Shangguan Yingying asked doubtfully, when Xiren stretched out a finger and shook it, saying, "These two are completely different. In the former, we relied on our own strength to solve this problem. It was just that the manager saw that the commotion was too big and chose to take action. We didn't take the initiative to ask for help. In the latter, we ask for help, which means that we don't have the ability. The two may seem to have the same ending, but the meaning is completely different. That's not all. In this way, we can be considered to have struck back head-on. Those fellows can no longer label us as cowards. If anyone wants to find trouble with us in the future, they'll have to think twice. Bachan's deep and bright eyes flashed with a deep light. Although they were only newcomers, he believed that their strength was not at the bottom of the outer hall. If they were to really fight, the strength they would erupt with would absolutely shock everyone. Shangguan Yingying, who didn't understand at first, finally understood. So that's your plan. So we're not going to challenge all the outer hall disciples. You guys really scare me to death. I thought you guys had gone crazy because of your brain damage. As Shangguan Yingying's voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but laugh. If we can defeat all the outer hall disciples, then we'll really be geniuses. Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but blush when she was teased by Xiren and the others. She said awkwardly, "Don't make fun of me. Isn't it because you guys didn't explain clearly that I misunderstood? Although we can expect the manager to appear, we don't know how big the commotion will be. So this battle isn't optimistic. I'm afraid we'll have to suffer a lot." Xiren glanced at Shangguan Yingying, as if to let her be mentally prepared. Looking at Xiren's serious look, Shangguan Yingying stopped joking and immediately nodded. "I understand. Yingying, if someone comes looking for trouble when we go out later, you don't have to be polite. Just scold whoever is unhappy. Anyway, we're definitely going to make a scene today." The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. After deciding to make a scene, she simply threw all her scruples aside. Since she wanted to make a scene, then she might as well make it bigger. Shangguan Yingying's eyes lit up. "Really?" Bachan nodded. "These guys scolded us so happily before. I'm afraid they thought we didn't dare to do anything. Now, look at who's scolding us the most. You could start with them. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey. I hope that our cooperation today can achieve a good result." Xiren straightened his robe, and a playful smile appeared on his gentle and elegant face. "I didn't expect that we would have to make a big scene as soon as we arrived at Penlai Palace. The blood in my body has begun to boil. Bai Shi, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai could not help but run out. They hurriedly said, "Our blood is boiling." The four people and three beasts looked at each other and smiled. A determined light appeared in their eyes. They were already prepared for the upcoming bloody battle. After making the decision, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not stay any longer. They immediately walked out. Chapter 3366. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three left, Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua, who were in the room, also revealed a curious expression. "Yanwei, how do you think these four little fellows will deal with this matter? In my opinion, I'm afraid they're planning to cause trouble when they go out now." As Long Yanwei's voice fell, Yi Zihua couldn't help but laugh. "Haha, I feel that these four little fellows are getting more and more interesting. I'm looking forward to how much trouble they can cause. We've seen their fighting strength last time. If they really cause trouble, I reckon that the movements of these fellows won't be small." Even though Long Yanwei had already expected that the commotion caused by Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three wouldn't be small, they never thought that the commotion would be so big. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three gradually returned to the residential area of the outer palace disciples with the conviction of facing death with equanimity. The moment they stepped into the residential area, they already felt countless covetous gazes falling on them. This kind of gaze was filled with aggression, as if they were treating Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three as their targets. "These four fellows have returned from Master Long's place. I presume that the demon pet egg has already fallen into their hands." "That's right. Master Long's subordinate said that Master Long and Master Yi left together to choose the demon pet egg, but that guy has already been kicked out of the Penlai Palace. So to say, as long as we rob them, the demon pet egg will fall into our hands?" The eyes of the outer palace disciples flashed with excitement. Thinking about being able to obtain the demon pet egg, they couldn't help but be excited. This discussion naturally fell into the ears of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Only then did they know that Master Long had already chased away the subordinate who leaked the news, and they couldn't help but feel a little more comforted in their hearts. Along the way, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others only felt that with every step they took, there was a trace of danger. In fact, they were very clear in their hearts that the reason why these fellows hadn't made a move yet wasn't because they were afraid of them, but because they were afraid of the other Outer Palace disciples present. There were only 3 demon pet eggs in total. If someone came up to deal with them first, the other cultivators would very likely be the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, so no one dared to act rashly. Of course, this situation did not last long before it was broken. "Yo, cowards, have you returned from Master Long's place? Is Lord Long having a good time?" At this moment, a burly fatty walked out and blocked the path of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Looking at the fat man's face, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others only felt that he was an eyesore. Shangguan Yingying narrowed her eyes. She remembered this guy. Many of those unpleasant words and guesses came from this fatty. "Damn fatty, what does it have to do with you? If you continue to be long-winded, do you believe that I will kill you?" Shangguan Yingying opened her mouth and spoke in a domineering tone. The Outer Palace disciples present couldn't help but gasp when they heard Shangguan Yingying's words. This fatty was at the 7th level of the Purple Realm. Among the Outer Palace disciples, his cultivation was considered quite strong. Chapter 3367. Not only the cultivators present, but even Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 were stunned when they heard Shangguan Yingying's words. They had already guessed that the hot-tempered Shangguan Yingying would not be polite with her words, but they did not expect her to be so straightforward and domineering. Shangguan Yingying was happy when she knew that she could explode at will. She had been holding back her anger for a long time. Since she did not need to care about anything now, she would naturally find something to say. After all, they would have to fight in the end, right? Fatty was dumbfounded when he heard Shangguan Yingying's words. He had been mocking Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 since the beginning. The 4 of them had been swallowing their anger and did not dare to talk back. He was very satisfied with this. It was a good opportunity to show his strength. However, Shangguan Yingying dared to say that she wanted to kill him. "Kill me." Fatty frowned coldly. He pointed at himself, and then at Shangguan Yingying. "Who do you think you are? You don't need to care who I am. However, I only know one thing. A good dog does not block the way." Shangguan Yingying looked at Fatty coldly. The more she looked at Fatty, the more unhappy she was. Cultivators put their mind on cultivation every day. She did not know how Fatty got so fat. He was really an eyesore. "You dare to call me a dog?" Fatty widened his eyes. He had been in the outer hall for so long, and no cultivator had dared to call him that. Shangguan Yingying smiled. "You said it yourself. I think you want to die, right?" Anger surged in the fatty's heart, and his eyes became increasingly sharp. A faint murderous aura had already spread out. "I think you want to die more, right?" Di Beichan said coldly. His cold and sharp eyes looked directly at Fatty. The coldness in his eyes was enough to freeze people. The fat man, who had already wanted to attack, couldn't help but quiver after seeing Di Beichan's gaze. He couldn't understand it in his heart. He had been in Penglai Island for so long. How could his murderous aura not be comparable to a newcomer who had just arrived? When the disciples who had been waiting to watch the show saw the completely different attitude of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, their expressions became interesting. Why did these 4 fellows suddenly change their personalities? Wasn't there no response no matter how much he insulted her before? This is a direct provocation. I don't know what's wrong with them. Could it be that they received some news from Master Long? Or are they under Master Long's protection, so they don't care at all? He's just a newcomer who just came to the Outer Palace, yet he's already so arrogant and independent. If he's not taught a lesson, he'll probably become even more lawless in the future. So what if he has Master Long's protection? These people don't know their limits. As long as they take the initiative to attack, then all of this naturally has nothing to do with us. If we accidentally kill them, the things in the Chinquan bag will naturally belong to the winner. The outer hall disciples were discussing animatedly. Suddenly, their faces were filled with interest. Everyone was full of expectations for the Chinquan bag of these four fellows, especially the demon pet egg. It was really a treasure that couldn't be compared to anything. Chapter 3368. The leader of the Heaven-Shaking clan, Gao Hanshun, had a certain reputation on Penglai Island. Although it was far from being comparable to the three great forces, he knew that Gao Hanshun was a Purple Realm 8th level cultivator. If someone of this level of cultivation could die at the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, it was enough to prove that the strength of these four guys was not simple. Thinking of this, the fatty could not help but turn around and look at his friends. Noticing the fatty's gaze, three more cultivators suddenly walked up and appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. It happened to be a 4-against-4 team. "You said I want to die?" The fatty sneered and reached out his hand towards Di Beichun, wanting to pat Di Beichun's face. "Xiao Bai face, a place like the Outer Palace is not suitable for a guy like you to stay. Why don't you go home and drink milk?" However, just as the fatty was about to move, Di Beichun had already slapped the fatty's hand back. "If it's not suitable for Xiao by faces like us, then is it suitable for a damn fatty like you?" Xiren sneered. "Although we've only been in the Outer Palace for a short period of time, according to my observation, there aren't many disciples in the Outer Palace who are as ugly as you." Following Xiren's words, the fatty's face instantly turned ugly. The degree of ugly expression was even more serious than when Shangguan Yingying said that she wanted to kill him. Thinking about it, Xiren's words really poked the fatty's sore spot. Not only that, the surrounding disciples could not help but laugh after hearing this. The fatty's appearance was really a sore spot. Usually, many people despised him. The fatty was also self-aware, did not mention this point. He was usually so overbearing that no one wanted to be the fatty's enemy. Naturally, no one would take the initiative to talk about this. However, at this moment, Xiren did not give him any face and said all this out loud. Naturally, everyone could not help but laugh. Fatty's expression turned cold. His malicious gaze locked on his Xiren, and his voice was bone-chilling. "Stinking brat, I'm going to kill you." However, in the face of such threatening words filled with killing intent, Xiren did not feel anything. He only pretended to be afraid and patted his chest, saying, "Io, I'm so scared. You're courting death." At this moment, the fatty could no longer endure it. He had stayed in the Outer Palace for such a long time, and it had been a long time since someone had dared to humiliate him like this. Facing the shame and indignation on the fat man's face, the sarcasm in the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others was even more obvious. This guy was just humiliated by them and was already angry like this. He didn't even think about how he had humiliated them before. It was simply ridiculous. In the next moment, the origin energy in the fat man's body surged out. He punched out with his right fist, aiming directly at Xiren's face. The more he looked at this fellow, the more annoyed he felt. He wanted to take this fellow's life first. Xiren was already prepared to defend himself. When the fatty's fist appeared, he dodged to the side and dodged the fatty's attack. At the same time, his fist also attacked. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others secretly praised Xiren in their hearts. In that case, the fatty was the one who made the first move, and the responsibility fell entirely on the fatty's shoulders. It had nothing to do with him at all. Chapter 3369. The three cultivators also felt that something was amiss. No matter what, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were all people that Master Long had recruited. Before this, they had clearly discussed how to force Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three to make the first move. That way, they wouldn't have to worry about Master Long's reprimand. However, they didn't expect that instead of angering Bailey Hongzhuang to death, it was when Xiren who had angered the fatty. Being ugly had always been the fatty's sore point. After all, there weren't many cultivators who still looked the same after reaching such a cultivation level. Now that Xiren had mercilessly scolded him, coupled with the mockery of the surrounding crowd, it was normal for the fatty to not be able to take it. Now, they could only say that they had failed at the first step. However, as long as they could kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, all of these problems wouldn't exist. Seeing that their opponents had come forward together, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other and immediately faced their respective opponents. As their opponents' auras completely exploded, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were clearly aware of their cultivations. 1 Purple Realm 7th level, 2 Purple Realm 6th level, and 1 Purple Realm 5th level. Looking at this formation, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three couldn't help but laugh coldly in their hearts. As long as no Purple Realm 8th level cultivator appeared, the other cultivators wouldn't be able to pose a huge threat to them. Di Baichen stood in front of the fatty without hesitation. Even though the fatty wanted to kill Xiren, he could only narrow his eyes when he saw Di Baichen standing in front of him. Since you want to die first, I'll fulfill your wish. The fatty's eyes were filled with a cold and ruthless light. He hadn't been so angry in a long time. Hee. Di Baichen laughed coldly. The contempt and disdain in his eyes were extremely thick. He was only at the 7th level of the Purple Realm, yet he dared to be so arrogant in front of him. It seemed that if he didn't give him a resounding slap, he wouldn't know how much he was worth. Bailey Hongzhuang and one Xiren were up against 2 Purple Realm Level 6 practitioners. Shangguan Yingying stood in front of the Purple Realm Level 5 practitioner, her heart leaping with joy. Now, it all depended on her performance. Even though they had just arrived at Penglai Island not long ago, their ability to fight beyond their level had never disappeared. Usually, as long as their opponent was not an exceptionally powerful practitioner of the same level, ordinary practitioners of the same level would not be their opponent at all. The battle broke out in an instant. Bailey Hongzhuang locked her eyes on the skinny dwarf in front of her. She had to admit that birds of a feather flocked together. Fatty's friends didn't look good at all. At the very least, the guy in front of her was not as tall as her. He looked like a mouse, a bit slippery but without any aura. Beauty, I heard that your name is Bailey Hongzhuang. The man's eyes revealed a wretched light. As long as you give me the demon pet egg, I'll let you go. How about it? Your skin is so soft and tender, I really can't bear to lay my hands on you. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips hooked up into a sneer. You can't bear to lay your hands on me, but I can. After saying that, Bailey Hongzhuang was too lazy to talk nonsense with this man. Her fist directly stretched out and attacked the opponent's neck without hesitation. Today, not only did they come to cause trouble, they also came to prove their ability. So this battle would not drag on. Chapter 3370. Although he did not think that a few newcomers to Penglai Island could be that powerful, since he had already made his move, he naturally would not diminish his own prestige. If Bailey Hongzhuang was unwilling to submit, then he could only use his own strength to make Bailey Hongzhuang submit. Bang! The moment their fists collided, the man's expression changed completely. Too powerful. Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was simply too powerful. Crack! The crowd could even hear the slight sound of bones cracking. The shorty immediately retracted his fist. The intense pain from his fist made him not dare to fight Bailey Hongzhuang head-on. With such a difference in strength, if he fought head-on, he would be the one at a disadvantage. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not intend to give him any time to think. With a flash of her body, she immediately appeared beside the cultivator. At the same time, a torrential storm of attacks landed mercilessly on the cultivator's body. Bang, bang, bang. The shorty kept dodging, but his dodging speed was not as fast as Bailey Hongzhuang's. Shadow shifting technique was a movement technique that Bailey Hongzhuang was proud of in her previous life. Now, she had already mastered shadow shifting technique. If the cultivator was not proficient in speed, they would not be able to keep up with her speed. What happened next was beyond everyone's expectations. This was because the Purple Realm Level 6 shorty had become Bailey Hongzhuang's target. In terms of speed, he could not dodge Bailey Hongzhuang. In terms of strength, he could not defeat Bailey Hongzhuang. Therefore, he could only become a dodging target. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's every attack landed squarely on his body. Bang, bang, bang. The strong and fierce power brought with it a sharp gust of wind. Bailey Hongzhuang did not intend to give her opponent any chance to retaliate. Since she had already made her move, she would use the simplest method to completely eliminate her opponent. In the eyes of the crowd, the short man's body was shaking like a sieve. At the same time, they could also see the blooming of blood. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression couldn't help but change. They didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang's strength to be so powerful. A Purple Realm 6th level cultivator was being chased and beaten by a Purple Realm 5th level cultivator, and he didn't even have a chance to retaliate. This was a little too exaggerated. Unfortunately, all of this was happening right in front of them. Even if they didn't want to believe it, it still happened. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang threw out another punch. The short man could no longer withstand such a fierce attack. His body flew out and landed heavily on the ground. The man's gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang was no longer filled with the contempt from before. Instead, it was filled with deep fear and terror. He did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so powerful. Even though he knew that the Purple Realm 8th level Gao Hanshan had died at the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, he always thought that it was because of the poison used by Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. He never thought that they would have such strength. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, the man's aura instantly withered. He only felt a sharp pain in his internal organs, as if they had been displaced. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked in front of the man. Her beautiful face was filled with coldness and frost, revealing a distant coldness and the indifference of the Grim Reaper. Chapter 3371. What are you trying to do? At this moment, the man no longer dared to underestimate Bailey Hongzhuang. This extremely beautiful woman's attacks were not just any ordinary kind of ruthless. Just the wounds on his body alone would take a very long time to heal. On the surface, it looked like he had only suffered some external injuries, but in reality, the severity of his internal injuries had far exceeded anyone's expectations. Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips curled into a sexy yet languid angle. Her cold and emotionless eyes swept across the crowd. When the crowd noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, they felt an inexplicable chill. I've heard that the Outer Palace doesn't forbid killing. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the man's face instantly drained of color. He never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would have such an idea. The man was now in a complete panic. He stared at Bailey Hongzhuang as if he wanted to say something, but realized that he had no idea what to say. The cultivators in the crowd all turned their gazes towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Their eyes were filled with suspicion. The Outer Palace did indeed allow for battles, and it did not exclude the possibility of death. However, Bailey Hongzhuang has only been in the Outer Palace for a few days. They found it hard to believe that Bailey Hongzhuang would have such courage. You want to kill me? The man stared fixedly at Bailey Hongzhuang, clearly unable to believe that Bailey Hongzhuang would do such a thing. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened. Since killing is not forbidden, why should I allow an eyesore like you to remain in the Outer Palace? Her voice fell, and before anyone could react, Bailey Hongzhuang's Luli sword had already pierced the man's chest without hesitation. The man spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were still fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. Up until the moment of his death, he still could not believe that Bailey Hongzhuang would kill him so cleanly. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm and cold. Since they were here to cause trouble anyway, the bigger the situation, the better. Now, the outer palace disciples were eyeing them covetously and thought that they were sheep that could be easily bullied. Since it was impossible for them to live in harmony with everyone, they might as well display their powers so that the other party would not dare to cause any more trouble. If they wanted to survive in the outer palace, they would first need to build a good relationship with everyone. Second, they would need to instill fear them. Now, the only thing they could do was the second option, so they had to show their ruthless side. Faced with such a Bailey Hongzhuang, the crowd was dumbfounded. From the beginning to the end, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shorty had only exchanged blows for a short period of time. At this moment, Shorty had completely disappeared from this world. None of them would have thought that this extremely beautiful and otherworldly woman in front of them would act so decisively. She did not hesitate to take someone's life. Her coldness and indifference reminded them of the beautiful Azura. While Bailey Hongzhuang was fighting, Shangwan Yingying's speed was even faster. Her opponent was only a 5th-level Purple Realm cultivator. She had completely crushed him with brute force. She remembered clearly how unpleasant the words these fellows had said. After living for so many years, she had never been insulted by such vulgar words. Chapter 3372. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang's indifference and decisiveness, Shangwan Yingying's violence also made everyone's heart turn cold, because she directly stepped on the other party's mouth until it burst. The reason was that the other party spoke rudely and the words he said were extremely unpleasant, so when she sent him to hell, she didn't give him the slightest chance to speak. Everyone had seen many ways to die, but they had never seen such a strange way to die. Looking at the completely distorted face, everyone couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. These two women were both first-class beauties, but who would have thought that the degree of ruthlessness was not inferior to their looks at all? Poisonous beauties, everyone couldn't help but think of this phrase in their minds. Previously, there were many people who had thoughts about Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying, but now it seemed that this wasn't an easy matter. The slightest bit of carelessness could cause them to lose their little lives. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying dealt with their opponents, they stood in the same place. They didn't have the slightest intention to help Di Beichun and Wenziren, because they believed that Di Beichun and Wenziren would also quickly finish this battle. When the fatty saw his two companions die in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying's strength would be so strong, and the speed at which they finished the battle was so fast. Originally, he thought that he could easily kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. As long as he obtained the demon pet egg, then he would be different from before. However, the reality was so cruel. His two companions were finished off just like that, and he was clearly at the 7th level of the Purple Realm, but against Di Beichun, he couldn't gain the slightest advantage. In this kind of battle, every moment he lasted was another moment of face slapping. If this spread out, if people didn't think that Di Beichun was too strong, then they would think that he was too weak. This wasn't an ordinary loss of face. Bang! Bang! When Di Beichun and Wenziren saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying had finished their battle, they also sped up and finished off their opponents with lightning speed. Pa! After dealing with his opponent, Ziren clapped his hands, and a faint smile appeared on his cultured and refined face. Now, I can finally have some peace and quiet. Hearing Ziren's words, the surrounding crowd's expression couldn't help but change. It had to be said that when Ziren's elegant demeanor didn't match his words at all. To be so arrogant without any strength, this kind of person should have gone to hell long ago. Di Beichun's expression was cold as he stepped on the fatty's body. The disdain and coldness in his eyes became more and more obvious. Just with this level of strength, he wanted to snatch their demon pet eggs. It was a bit too laughable. I thought these guys knew us very well. I didn't expect them to not know us at all. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. When they came out of the house, they had heard all kinds of discussions. All of this proved that during this period of time, everyone had already investigated their identities and backgrounds thoroughly. Logically speaking, everyone should have some understanding of their battle with Gao Hanshan. They didn't think that the other party would dare to find trouble with them with just this kind of formation. In fact, everyone had indeed investigated the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in Gao Hanshan. However, no one believed that they, who were only at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, could defeat Gao Hanshan. Chapter 3373. After dealing with the 4 fellows, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others quietly swept their gazes across the crowd. Many cultivators turned their gazes away when they noticed their gazes. They were secretly assessing the true power of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. Fatty Heart and the other 3 were considered to be quite powerful among them. Now that they had been dealt with so easily, it was clear that it would not be an easy task for them to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. If they were to charge forward recklessly, they would most likely end up like Fatty Heart and the other 3. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 had used their actions to prove their character. If anyone were to charge forward, it would either be their death or their own. No matter who it was, it had not been easy for them to reach this point. No one wanted to throw away their little lives here, so they had to think carefully. In an instant, the surrounding cultivators quieted down. Their gazes constantly scanned their surroundings, wondering who would make the next move. However, everyone clearly had the same idea, so no one dared to continue to cause trouble for the time being. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 looked at each other. It seems that their move of killing the chicken to warn the monkey had a certain degree of effect. After killing 4 people, these fellows no longer dared to act blindly without thinking. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 continued their journey towards the 5th building. It would be best if these fellows did not continue to cause trouble. However, if they insisted on causing trouble, they would have no choice but to fight to the end. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 continue their journey, the crowd could not help but follow closely behind them, anticipating who would make the next move. This was the first time a scene like this had happened in the entire Outer Palace. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 drew closer to the 5th building, the crowd of Outer Palace disciples could not help but grow anxious. Once Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 returned to the building and completed the contract, it would be too late for them to do anything else. Why isn't anyone making a move? If they don't make a move now, it'll all be too late. I didn't expect the strength of these 4 fellows to be so strong. There may not be many people who are their opponents in a one-on-one fight, but as long as we attack together, the 4 of them will only die. Don't hesitate anymore. If you continue like this, you won't be able to get any benefits. Some of the disciples who weren't strong enough and wanted to get the demon pet eggs were already anxious. This was such a great opportunity. If they missed it, they didn't know when they would be able to get the demon pet eggs in the future. The other cultivators looked at each other in dismay. Thousands of thoughts ran through their minds. If they missed this opportunity, they would not have another chance. Everyone's emotions were complicated to the extreme. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were also paying attention to the changes in everyone's emotions. These fellows still haven't shown any signs of making a move. Don't tell me they're going to settle this just like that. Shangguan Yingying's eyes were filled with surprise. She was prepared to fight to the death, but she didn't expect everyone to stop now. It's not certain yet, unless it's until we enter the building, Bailey Hongzhuang transmitted. However, I feel that all of this won't be completed so smoothly. The closer the distance, the greater the danger. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.